He showed up at an hour with a price. Within 3 hours, he had a crew over there, had all the equipment, all the stuff secured.
She's trying to act
Showed up
like
in the
her.
middle of the
Yeah.
electrical storm 2 days later.
I love
Talk to
that.
me after the meeting.
Okay, and
So cute.
it is completely taken care of. He did everything, every piece of equipment you could think. He's down the way working on something else now, farther down the way.
Does not have a license.
Who are you talking about?
Really?
Never mind.
Not at all?
Look, I can't say anymore
Okay. Okay,
by law.
okay.
Let's just say that. If that tells you anything,
He gave us all his,
didn't give me as a reference, I'm sure.
no, that, we didn't have time for that.
Well, I
We
know,
had to
just
secure the stuff.
beware. Check the state of North
Well,
Carolina.
he's already done. He's already finished.
Oh,
all
well,
this.
then that's
He's
fine.
done.
But
He did it in 2.5
He's
days.
done that dock already?
It's gone and the equipment's gone and
he just removed it all, I guess.
he pulled up all the pilings. Everything had to be cut and sawed and he pulled everything up. And then it took 2.5, almost 3 days. He cleaned up. It was like it was never there. There's not even so much as a splinter left on the ground.
Wow.
But anyway, for us, it was a godsend
Oh, I'll
because
bet.
we couldn't get, and we still have not gotten called back.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
the
want,
dock.
yeah, I
Oh,
told
you
you, F&S Marine, we were on their list to have a second lift put in before Florence. And they still never got around to us.
What's his name?
Durwood
No,
and,
Durwood, yeah.
Ed
Um,
Flynn.
Ed Flynn,
Yeah.
that's who we, I mean, and we've always used him, Vance Young, I mean, all the
Well, we had
properties
him on the
we've
phone.
owned.
We had, Bill was on the
I
phone with
mean,
Ed
we've
and I was on
always
the phone with
used
Durwood. We
them.
had them
They're
physically on the
so
phone.
good, but I mean, you
It just takes forever.
and they don't like coming between the bridges, and we're between the bridges because they have to break all their
Yeah.
equipment down.
Yeah.
So I think we're going with somebody else,
Hey, David, how are you?
unfortunately. But
How are you? We got a nice big open body of water now. But way out in the water are 3 floating docks that are perfectly intact.
Oh, wow.
They just got built. So they did, so I'm gonna take my relaxation station. I'm gonna paddle out there with my cooler and my chair.
yeah, there's a lot of people out in the.
Yes, I saw him when I came in. Well, they should have been here last time, the first time we didn't. do it.
They have the Parks and Rec
Interesting.
stuff on the weekend at first.
That's what I told, I talked to a number of them, and I said, I voted for it because no one showed up. I figured y'all didn't care.
Well, it wasn't presented quite the same, I don't think.
Well, it's still, yeah, but my whole thing is this, if the people in the area don't,
Right.
I mean, my assumption is they don't care, because I've been here long enough that usually when we have something that comes up that people care about,
You know
a
it.
room full, yeah, you know about it.
Why didn't anybody come? What was this?
I don't, I'm not sure, but that.
Karen, could you answer your phone? Neil, could you answer your phone, Karen?
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Call.
Interesting.
I was like, I'm not gonna be able to hear anything. I was like, probably not.
Well, I have some elevator music piped in while we
Yeah.
wait.
There you go.
for the meeting to start.
It's the purse. God, now I'm paranoid.
And then your phone's gonna start vibrating, it's gonna be all over. Oh, me.
Did you survive the storm?
We did real well. I sat on my front porch till 2 o'clock because I wanted to look at
We were
it.
up till 2 a.m. too.
So I wanted to look at the sound at high tide. And I mean, at low tide. And at low tide is exactly the same place it was at high tide on my property, 2 inches over my pier.
Wow.
So nothing got hurt. I mean, 2 inches over my pier.
See, ours wasn't over the pier. It was right underneath it. Which
My
was
pier's
bad.
low.
We
I
had
got
a
low
little
pier.
splash over, but nothing.
Oh, it took about 4 inches
Hey,
of sand out from on the back of my bulkhead,
Right,
where it popped over the bulkhead. I had rock back about 12 feet, but I mean,
Nothing else.
no, a good northeaster that blows for about 3 days on a moon high tide does the same thing.
Yeah.
Without the waves.
Right, I've seen some tides that can be just about that high.
And it backed up to about halfway up my driveway through the sewer system.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, that happens also.
Okay, I was gonna say it's
during
probably,
Yeah, yeah. It's, the rain doesn't go out. Our pipe is underneath sand, so it has to have enough. When the tide goes down, all the water goes away.
okay. Caroline Beach has some of that same issue in some of those areas, don't they? I tell you, poor people in Brunswick County, they took a beating.
Oh, we've got, my wife has relatives down there that just,
It's a little underpredicted, I think.
well, yeah, but, and, you know, but they kept saying it was gonna hit at high tide and that, you know, and whoever was smart, unfortunate enough to be there at high tide was gonna get hit bad. I mean, if it'd been us 6 hours earlier
Yeah,
Or 6 hours later.
or 6 hours later,
yeah.
Yeah, we got lucky.
yeah, I mean, it was a dead low tide when it hit. I mean, it was a nice low tide. It was 5 feet lower than the high tide,
Wow.
because that was a full moon high tide. It was-
It was a,
Yeah, it was actually minus 0.01 is what the tide chart called it.
oh, wow.
Low tide.
Yeah.
Who's Ace? Is he with remote?
Pardon me?
Ace remote. Ace is not gonna be here.
Ace is not gonna be here tonight, yeah. So we have, who else are we missing?
Neil's online.
Meals on.
Oh, that's right.
Nice, yeah.
Looking
I
around.
know it seems,
I mean, this
I
is,
still can't get used to all these, even the Zoom meetings we do for work and stuff. It's just, I can't get used to them.
the flying has picked back up because a lot of people in your type of business are having trouble with the Zoom meetings. Not being there with the person is making a big difference.
Yeah,
And a lot of the contractors and developers are starting to get
Open
back
back.
in aviation. Yeah, I'm on my first trip since the 1st of February.
wow.
And they don't call me, and I'm the last choice. So it means everybody must have been flying because there was one empty seat and I got it.
well, I have 5:30, so I'll call the meeting to order. And if everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item to address is the approval of the minutes from the July 7 meeting. Did anyone have any changes that they sent into Robert or any comments? And just to verify, Neil, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Great. And I guess Robert knows that the folks
Yes.
in the other room can hear us okay?
Yes.
So do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make the motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second? Okay, so all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Robert, that was unanimous. I guess Robert can see us, so.
I believe that's the first thing.
The first item on the agenda is a review and discussion of the Parks and Recreation program fees. And I'm assuming Tony
Yeah,
or Katie
so
will have,
Katie will be here.
Katie will have a presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. Basically what in the memo that that's in your agenda packet, I took some of the things that were discussed. I think some of the things that were discussed were some possible revenue generators for Parks and Rec. And so I brought the discussion that we had at the last planning board meeting to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. We had to cancel last week. Unfortunately, we were able to meet last night and go over some of the things that had been discussed in here. And when I sent out the agenda originally after our last meeting to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, I'd asked them for other suggestions, or it was brought up another suggestion for some possible ways to generate, make some more money for Parks and Rec. So that was one of the items on this list too that's in the memo. So the first thing that we talked about, or one of the things we talked about in the planning board's meeting was a message board and possibly putting up messages like Carolina Beach, did, and they get $100 a day for messages. And what I found out was that their Parks and Rec department does not actually use it that often. The chamber will use it occasionally for events, but typically what happens is that with races, when they're using the message board, like a DOT type message board, is they're having to put those message boards out because they're closing traffic lanes or there's congestion or whatever. And like with our run event, and we do the Valentine run in February, when we contract with the company who puts out the cones and everything, they also provide the message board. So that's part of the deal. So that's where they don't wind up having to use their message board as often maybe as they thought they were going to. I'm not really sure about that, but the chamber will use it sometimes. Their Chamber of Commerce will use it sometimes to announce events. But nothing like kind of what we had talked about, Jim, maybe putting a message up like, will you marry me, somebody, whoever,
Happy birthday.
happy birthday, and maybe,
Advertisements.
yeah, kind of. And I don't know that maybe, totally up to whatever kind of
South
recommendation.
Lots full.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Um,
South Lots full.
Yeah, well, that's always full, so it would always be up there.
But we looked at I did get a price on the message board, and it was around $75,000 to replace the board that we have on Causeway and the one on Salisbury. That's 3 sides, that we can change up with whatever. The Parks and Rec Advisory Committee last night said, well, look, why don't we go ahead and maybe see about using the board for messages and see what kind of interest there is. Are people really going to use it for that? And Parks and Rec would just change it with the letters and the space that we have available. Obviously digital, and you can do a lot more with it, but let's just see what kind of interest, we can get. Mm-hmm. So they kind of came up with some fees, and then basically that would be something that would have to be approved by the board. But they did have discussion about it, and I don't know if there's any more, if y'all want to have any more continued discussion about it and agree with that, maybe as an opportunity.
So you're saying like test it with the letters first?
Right, what we have right now, and see if there's any interest.
Yeah, I would like to see something like that before a big flashing digital light that, or lighted sign that.
Just from a cost standpoint,
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Well, I called Katie this morning because I asked her if she had any objection to proposing not doing 3 sides, just doing 2, because everybody going down Causeway would see it coming in. I know we have 2 sides on Causeway now, but we could reduce it to just 1, and that would cut the cost probably not quite a third, but
Right.
that would be a significant savings.
Oh, to do digital, right.
Yeah, with the
Digital.
new digital.
And I did talk to the sales rep today because he knew that we were going to be, that I was going to have a couple of meetings and discussion about it. And he said the salesperson is coming in town, showing it to somebody else. If if there's any interest, he could be here at 3 o'clock on Friday with the trailer of the 3 different digital signs that they offer. Of course, the $75,000 is the top of the line.
Mhm.
Because
But is that look, that digital look lit up, and does that really fit with the vibe of this beach? I don't know that, for me personally, I don't know that.
I probably
fits
have
with
the
that.
opposite opinion of you, and I know what you're saying, and I think we're gonna have to make sure if we go through with this, it's not this big bright thing, but I think the signs that we have out here now are just kind of junky looking because they're going to stick all those letters on there. Just kind of remind me of when you put up at a gas station, when they change the price of the
But
fuel.
could that be improved?
Pardon me?
Could that, we look at improving that or making it look nicer as opposed to big lighted digital?
Well, I think,
Just a thought.
no, I agree with you, but I'm kind of with Jim. I think it can be done in a way that it's not like bright red and, orange. If you just keep colors kind of muted, white and maybe a light blue or something. If you could make it look
I think you
tactful,
pretty
I
much
think.
do anything almost
Right.
you want with them.
I know what you're saying though, like the
Yeah, I
big
agree.
bright, like
So you don't
flashing
want
lights.
something
Yeah,
Body.
but I
wearing
think,
at you. But the ones the billboards that you see along the roads now, it's like looking at a television. It's just so crystal clear and pleasant to look at. I will admit what he put in the packet that he gave Katie, that's kind of like, too flashy, but I do have another question, Katie. If we were to go ahead with this, could the persons, let's say like Coastal Kia put an ad on there and they paid for an
That's what I
ad.
was gonna
Pardon
keep on, I was gonna make the suggestion, not that,
me?
but
Can the town still have their message on there? Like, so Coastal Kia would get the majority of the sign, but the town could still have, let's say, there's a water main break down on, Water Street or something, and they have to post that message on there or some emergency message, but that, in other words, there could be 2 messages on the sign at one time.
I'm not really sure about that, and that's something that, Friday when he does his demo, can you show us how that would look? Can you show us? But then there's also, there would be all kind of rules. Can you have for-profit advertisements up there basically, or is this just to be personal messages? There's kind of all kinds of different ways to look at it, the use of it. And
I guess I would think about it as if it's bringing money into the town, it's a whole lot better than seeing all these dang little signs that everybody always tries to stick up.
right,
And I would think that the businesses on the beaches, like say South End Surf Shop and some of the others it would benefit our businesses, our local businesses. This is my opinion, but I would think it would benefit them.
I could see some of the restaurants using it too, maybe.
and if you could have it where, like, a billboard that does, I don't know if they do 3 or 4, and they have to stay on there X length of time so that it's not a driving distraction.
Right.
You could have the town message alternating with South End Surf Shop. It is a possibility if that will, do you know if this high-end sign has the capability of doing more than one?
it ought to for that price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't, but again, they're gonna be, I can find out those things on Friday, because he, like I said, Rich would bring the trailer with the 3 different signs and give us a demo.
Basically,
And
it's
anybody could come to the demo.
Basically, it's a cross between the big billboard when you're going over Bradley Creek that changes, and that guy that goes around to like the nail salons and my gym that has the TVs up in the corner, and you buy your ad space and it changes, you're gonna see him. And the nail salon has it too. He's gone around and it's a TV, whatever your TV is, and for every 20 seconds, your business is advertised. Then it goes to something else, something else, something else. It does it all day long in rotation. So
This
it's
is
a
just
cross
a,
between the 2 of those is
this
what
is
it
just a
sounds like.
computer program and a monitor
Right,
that's an outdoor monitor. It should be able to do anything you can do with your
Yeah.
computer. It's with their software.
Right.
I'm sure they've got the software set up for, we're not the first people that probably said we won't have a tagline at the bottom or something.
Right.
Right.
And it can be obviously controlled from in here, whoever would be doing it. I don't know. if
Yeah,
the
it's just
IT
online,
administrator would
anywhere,
do it.
yeah.
And I like the thought of it because you could immediately start putting warnings out when the storms are coming. I just think it would be phenomenal for that. You know, what's going on, what's happening, be a whole lot.
And as I said earlier, water main break, I mean.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, we have those, and, because the visitors may not know where to go to when we
To
have
get that
the
in.
boiling water
Mhm.
type thing. I think that portion of it
I think it's a great
makes a
idea.
good thing, because Katie can't run out there for little things that's boil your water.
Yeah.
Oil alert.
We have done that.
30
In
minutes later,
hurricanes.
the message is done.
Yeah,
Yeah, before Facebook and
Yeah.
website and stuff,
yeah,
we were
but
changing.
when I'm on
some.
vacation, I don't
Yeah.
go to the town.
A question, Jim?
I have websites now.
Jim, I've got a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so something in the back of my mind sticks with me with the old, not the old fire station, but I guess the living quarters that were built, that we were able to only lease those to the flotilla or to some quasi nonprofit or whatever it is. My point is, there seemed to be something about the town property being utilized in some commercial way. Katie, maybe you have more specifics about that, since obviously we do provide facilities for commercial entities, but I just wonder, it should be a pretty straightforward question to the town
When we
attorney,
have,
as far as the ability to use any kind of a signage thing.
so if anybody wants to use the rec center or the facilities for profit, that requires board approval. So, I mean, and I'm not sure, and maybe Tony knows, I think he stepped out, he may know a little bit more about that.
The only other comment I have was with regard to the aesthetics that you're talking about, colors and things like that. Consider what it looks like at night versus daytime. It could have a totally different look to it.
Right.
Yep.
Ted, is there any kind of a payback estimate on, given the cost of this type of equipment and what fees we might be able to charge? Is there any examples out there you're able to get from other municipalities?
The only one I knew was the Carolina Beach charges $100 a day. But they get very little use, and they don't do anything like, there's no personal messages or anything like that. It's more like an announcement of an event, or, roads closed, or.
Well, I did a quick, really down and dirty. I just took 365 days a year. I cut it in half. So let's say we get half the year, half the days at $100 a day. That's $9,000. So the payback on these things would,
And that would be one side, because you've got free.
yeah. So the payback, and of course, ultimately, it's the board's decision. And I know that they're going to take all this in, the aesthetics and the appropriate messages and so forth. But if we did allow commercial advertising and the personal messages and the announcements and things, we probably could, get a lot of days of usage out of it, and hopefully make some money for the Parks and Recs department if they so choose to direct that money into Parks and Recs. Hopefully they would. One other thought I had too about aesthetics is I think we could probably get the Garden Club, the Wrightsville Beach Foundation, or someone to do some nice landscaping around the base of these things to dress them up and make them look more attractive.
Well, and we haven't been able to do that because we have to get underneath it, and it could only be so high, so we couldn't really put a garden around it, because now we have to work underneath them. So
When you change the messages.
Right. and
Yeah,
Of course,
yeah.
you wouldn't have to do that.
Right.
With the digital.
So how do we want to go, and I don't want to cut the conversation off if other people have comments on this one, but do we want to take these one by one and make a recommendation to the board? I mean, I guess the big question is, do we want to recommend that we pursue this?
Are you doing beaches, we come to them? You're saying
Pardon?
doing beaches, we come to them?
Yeah, do
Yeah.
you want to do it as we come to each item?
I would.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's a great idea.
okay, great. You good with that, Neil?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what Cheryl said. Could you repeat it? I think it was Cheryl that spoke. Maybe it was Leanne.
It was Jim, right?
No, no.
Actually, all three of us spoke, but we were in agreement that we would go ahead and make a recommendation on each item one by one before we went to the next item.
And is that a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen, or is that a recommendation to the Parks and Rec Committee? I'm still a little unclear as to what role we play in this. I know what we're asked to do was look at the fees, and this seems to be somewhat different than that.
Well, I think what happened in my mind is we started looking at the fees and we looked at the fees and we realized that there's no way the fees are going to cover anywhere close to what the costs are. And we know that. Now we can go back and look at the fees and see if there's anything we can raise, but so then we came up with this idea, and the tennis court lighting came up in all of this. So I guess we just assumed we would go ahead and address all these things that were relative to the Parks and Recs Department.
Or what if I give you what they suggested
Yeah,
and you can tell us whether or not y'all are in support of, and then you have maybe both of you in agreement, or, and then it would go to the board that way, Tony?
The
is that
Parks and
maybe
Rec
it?
Committee.
And the planning, you know, they brought these items to y'all and then
Yeah, because the Board of Aldermen are looking for recommendations. They're looking for us to give them recommendations on how do you balance the budget or get close to balancing the budget. Am I right?
correct. That's my understanding, yes.
It sounds like to me, Neil, wherever you went, that that would be part of us making recommendations of, but I think they also will want us to look at the programs and that also be addressed, you know. Right?
That was my understanding of our
My understanding
marching
as
orders,
well.
yes. Is that correct, Tony? Yep, so. Yeah,
that's
so
your
you
question,
said
so
the
maybe we can-
Parks and Recs had recommendations on
So-
fee structure and stuff.
Right, so when they talked about it, you know, the sticker shock with that 75,000, let's try using the boards that we have now, you know, get a program out there that says, you know, and of course, we're gonna have to define, you know, how each board, you know, which board we use, how, you know, fees, that kind of thing, but their suggestion was try this board first before we, you know, spend any money, and charge maybe $100 a day per side, $400 for a week, you know, Monday through Friday, and then $250 for a weekend, knowing that, you know, we can't change it in the middle of the weekend. So Friday, you know, your weekend rate would be Friday 5 p.m. to Monday 8 a.m. and then 5 days a week would be 8 a.m. to Friday, 8 a.m. Monday to 5 p.m. Friday, that kind of thing, and just one side, and start with those various fees and see if there's any kind of interest. Now, we didn't go into discussions about whether it be just a personal message or, you know, for-profit advertisement. We didn't really get into any kind of advertising. You know, we're very limited with those signs because we have 4 lines, 13 characters, so there's a lot of abbreviation. Yes.
Yeah, I think their recommendation or suggestion is a great one, but I think we also have to realize that if I was let's say I was a business like South End Surf Shop, I wouldn't be willing to pay as much for the current sign as I would the electronic sign.
Right.
I think they'd get more mileage out of it. So we have to just recognize that we probably do better with the
I
electronic
agree with
signs.
that. The numbers would definitely be different, I think.
Yeah. As long as everybody stays aware of that.
Might be hard to justify with the numbers that you get. from the current board.
A lot more money, electronic sign.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm talking about the people who want to use it. So if you're facing whether or not you should go all out, go all in for the electronic sign, I'm not sure you could base that off the numbers that you're gonna get for the sign that we currently have. So,
Should we make an assumption that the local businesses would be the primary clients for this? If we make that assumption, we could canvass them and build a case, an economic model, because as the taxpayers are going to want to understand what's the payback on this thing. And I don't think it can be a lightly thought through couple of examples, but something that has some teeth in it, because we've spoken to the local merchants or beyond. It's a lot of money to spend, just as the tennis court lighting would be. Both items are not instant revenue generators. They're instant cost issues.
I think the digital sign though could be, if it was handled by, I mean, you look at the Pro-Am surf competition, those people would pay to get that advertised. And they got big old signs, probably illegal on the side of their building. But if it's canvassed, I think it could be a revenue generating if it's,
I like Neil's idea about canvassing. Could we agree that we can do away with the one side?
Oh, and sure, we can, I mean,
do y'all agree that if we just have one side Causeway, one side Salisbury, we don't need the other side on Causeway? Because that would bring because everybody's going to see this 75 grand and,
right.
But if we can bring the number down, and of course you're going to bid it out, so maybe we get the number down to 50 grand, that's a lot more palatable than 75.
so you think instead of having it like this on the Causeway, it would just be like this?
oh no, it would
Facing.
still need to face the same way. You'd still-
Yeah,
It
the
would just be
Causeway
on one side.
has two sides now.
Right.
He's just saying as you're coming over.
It wouldn't be, you wouldn't see it on you when you're leaving.
Oh,
Or you were saying the other way. You see it as you're coming or you see it as you're leaving?
No, I would do it as you're coming onto the beach,
Okay.
just like Salisbury is. So both of, and then there wouldn't be
Yeah.
a backside on Causeway.
If the signage is parallel to Causeway, is it visible as you drive, as you approach it and drive past it?
It's perpendicular.
Perpendicular.
But can it be parallel and therefore visible as you approach it and pass it by?
No, it's perpendicular now, and we leave it perpendicular.
And I'm suggesting, can it be made parallel so that you don't have the issue of there's a front and back, or you can see it either way you're driving.
I don't
You
think
can't
it-
really.
I don't
read
think you'd see it
Yeah, I
parallel.
don't think you'd see it either.
Mhm.
There's too much traffic and things happening with cars, especially on Causeway.
Most people drive so fast they won't see it anyway.
Yeah, Neil, the point I'm trying to make is, by habit, all the residents that come into the island or visitors on Causeway, they've seen it when they come in, so they're just gonna see the same message when they come off. So
I don't disagree with you, Jim, but if I'm buying advertising space, I want to understand the maximum coverage I can get, even though I may discount the people leaving the island versus the people coming on the island. But the fact is, if you turn it only facing coming on the island, then you've lost that traffic in the opposite direction, which has some value. So I would expect the manufacturer of such a signage to be able to give you some input give us some input as to what its range of visibility is from its sides. I don't assume that it has to face you directly to be able to see it, but then again, there may be some very specific angles where you can see it and angles where you can't. Like a TV screen.
You're saying like maybe see it in a curve? Is that what you're speaking about? parallel in one of the curves where you see it.
You mean curve screen or curve in the road?
No, curve in the road. I mean, that's the only
Yeah.
chance of being parallel that you might be able to see it both ways is having the apex of a curve.
I'm technically out of my league now, but I'm just raising the issue that if we assume it has to be perpendicular, we may be missing an opportunity to get traffic in both directions. If it can handle being in parallel, maybe it has to be set back a little bit more. Maybe it has to be placed a little bit higher so that it's more visible in that regard. I would expect companies that sell these things to be able to help with that knowledge.
Well, we can ask, I mean, I can ask for a demo and ask those questions
When it comes.
when he comes on Friday, you know, and if anybody wants to join me, I'll go ahead and have him come out and ask these questions. Typically, we put banners, pretty much every sign is perpendicular, because if you have it parallel to the road, you're not gonna see it coming in until you get right almost on it, when you've got to turn your head or whatever, and you're not really looking at traffic. So pretty much any signage is, you're looking at it head on, rather than parallel to the road. It's perpendicular, generally perpendicular. And especially where that is right now, you've got the park entrance sign, it may have to set back a little bit, but.
Maybe if you do the two sides, I mean, you know, 1 and 1 with the possibility, if it goes well, adding the third side down the road might be an option. You know, so make it one-sided, but see what the options would be to add that second side. If it goes over well and we get a lot of potential people want to put on it.
So maybe just start first of all, just ask for separate costs for each, just, you know, phase 1, phase 2,
Okay.
phase 3.
Or how would it work if we just don't worry about this side and just put it up here on this side, both sides, over here and not over there, and make that phase 2? So
I can really just get a cost for individual,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3.
Ask
and
him for
then-
the 3 options.
Yeah.
How's that? Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or just pricing.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we might be going into too much detail, but I guess we need to give the aldermen all the options we can. Because I'd like to see this thing succeed, and I just hate to, you know, everybody's gonna see $75,000 and it's like you're gonna get killed before it gets out of the gate.
Yeah.
I do think if it's tastefully done, I think it can be a big benefit to the town in the long run.
In more ways, I mean, getting information as well as helping pay for Parks and Rec. I mean,
Right.
fold.
All right.
So how do we write this up for, as a recommendation?
So how do you feel about, do we start with messages on that board at all, or is that not, how do you feel about what the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee was saying?
About the recommendation about trying it out.
Trying it out on that.
I think it's great, but now we'll kind of have to vote on everything. But now is that something that would have to go before the alderman?
Oh,
before we
yes.
could start
Oh,
putting
yeah,
messages
yeah,
on
this
it?
would be a
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay.
And it could be something too, you try out just with personal messages, because that's a simple, happy birthday so-and-so this, and you're not getting into advertising, and like you said, is a business really gonna want, they have such limited space.
Yeah.
You know,
But canvassing the businesses would be,
yes,
set the personal out to see how much personal you might get, because that probably wouldn't change much
right.
until, of course, you put their picture on. But, and then do the canvas of the businesses, and not only the business of the beach, but recommend it to everyone, in order to put it out as a regular to the whole community.
when you say canvassing and we're going to different businesses, this would include the beach bars, right?
Unless we say no alcohol.
That's just, I mean, that's something you think about. Was that inclusive of
Yeah,
of
well,
Red Dogs and Jimmy's and 22 North and Loggerheads and Palm Room and all that? Would they be
we can,
able to advertise?
they would, in general,
I
they
mean,
would
I
unless
would
we
think-
set something, say no.
Yeah,
And then I would hope that we would, I mean.
Well, probably your for-profits, nonprofits or personal.
There's a side of this I like, and there's a side of it I don't like, and that's something,
That's true.
you know,
That's true. We gotta think about
we gotta
that.
really think about this because they're all right, a lot of them right now holding their hands up, what about us, what about us? You know, I can see there's a big difference between Sweetwater Surf Shop or the whatever, the surf thing going up and, you know, and then the bars wanting to advertise their bars and happy hour and, you know, 50% shots and whatnot.
Yeah,
I suspect we probably need to take some more time on this one. Because I just thought another one, okay, so what do you do, for example, with the Blockade Runner that has a restaurant and a bar, in theory?
Same thing with Sharps or South Beach or any of the other
Yeah.
bar restaurants, 22 North, I mean, we all know that's a bar. Just something about it.
it'd be interesting to, yeah,
Pardon me?
it'd be interesting to see what, you know, the Board of Aldermen thought about that. And I'm sure that they're, I don't know, I wouldn't want to suggest what they would say, but
Well,
It
you
sounds
make-
like we're in the storming phase of trying to toss these ideas around. I don't think we're at a point where we can start creating the restrictions. And I guess I want to just raise the flag once again. Is that really what our role is as the planning board on this? Or is there another body that's supposed to be really looking out for what Parks and Rec
Like
is
the-
supposed to do operationally and strategically? We've put a range of things out there to be considered.
Is there any way we can turn his volume up? It seemed a little.
Yeah,
Hard to hear.
I
Would
think
you
if
like-
the Aldermen are looking for us to make recommendations and that would just be a recommendation. I don't think we have to get to the specifics. Do you?
No, I don't. In fact, I think what we ought to do, here's my thought, is we ought to, 'cause I don't know if they've even heard about this yet, have they?
No, we just talked about it last night.
Why don't we float the idea and see if the aldermen are even interested in
Right.
pursuing
And
this?
then they'll say, tell us to look into it farther or no. They
They-
might say, take these things and say, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then take all the yeses and then work on. the
Or they may
specifics.
just say, we're not interested in pursuing this idea, and then,
Yeah,
or they may come back and they say, okay, we'd like Parks and Recs to look at this, or they want the planning board to look at it.
mhm.
And then we'll have some direction. Because yeah, to Neil's point, we have drifted a little bit, but we're
Yeah.
trying to solve the monetary crisis in Parks and Rec.
So
Maybe
that'd be
should it
something
be-
we work out later, going up to the different phases and getting the prices. That price is gonna probably make everybody go, oh my God. But then that would be part of when we start getting into specifics and then we work on the price on phase one or price on phase two instead of doing it tonight. I just think they're looking for recommendations. And then
So
when-
what if,
when we go
I'm
back-
sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Leanne. I couldn't tell if you were stopped or not. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm done.
Okay, so it seems to me a one pager that simply covers what the concept is, what some of the issues that have been explored in our discussion, whether it's this item or another item. And with the basic question is this something that the board feels should be further pursued? And where should it likely be done? Where should it be pursued? But they need to have some meat on the bones, but they don't have to have all the excruciating details. I think they should understand We've explored it from a commercial point of view. Who are some of the likely clients? What some of the concerns might be as to how it gets utilized across the array of commercial entities in the town, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a one pager.
I think it's more of a one paragraph right now.
Well, yeah, you can get 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs in a page, but my point is that if we call it a report, I think we're going to get aggravated in trying to create a report, but we can get the concept down and a couple of the key issues verbalized.
You started to say something.
Well, I was just gonna suggest, Tony, maybe the items that both committees are looking at be presented to the board. These are some things that we've discussed. These are some of the issues with each one. Who do you want to pursue it or do you want to, I mean, is that the way we do it? Maybe
Yeah.
both of them have, kind of agreed upon or not, because we're going down each item. And then just ask for direction.
Yeah,
Do we-
I think that'd be
Okay.
good.
Sounds like a plan.
I think that'd help.
So basically, it would be the sign we discussed, maybe using this one, maybe not, just holding out for a digital sign. This is how much it costs per side or per single board. We talked about, is it just personal? Is it just, can we open it up to commercial? How do you want to proceed? Do you want us to go any further?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
So that would take care of that item. And what do y'all think about we get all this penned and at the next meeting, because you're going to go back to Parks and Rec one more time, right?
I can bring it back to them, with what y'all,
And then we'll conclude everything at our next meeting and then send it down to the alderman for
okay,
recommendations to them and ask them, how do you want this pursued? Do you want it pursued at all, each item? And I would think it'd be prudent, and I'd be willing to do it unless somebody else wants to do it. One person from the planning board should be with you for the presentation and one person for Parks and Rec.
To the Board of Aldermen.
To the Board of Aldermen, because we don't want Katie to be the sacrificial lamb up there. And she's been that before, so.
Would that be at this Thursday meeting or?
No, I
Sunday,
think
the
we
one
would
after.
review everything one more time
Yeah.
and then she's got to go back to Parks and Rec and they don't, but so it'd be in September.
so it'd actually have to be October because Labor Day is the first Monday. And then y'all meet the second Monday, unless, Tuesday. So they don't meet till the second Monday. So they would
Okay.
be meeting after y'all. In
So
September.
is that okay with everyone? I mean, there's no emergency on any of this.
I was gonna
These
say
items,
that somebody with the planning board needs to tell our side when it's presented to them. That's
Right.
actually what I was gonna write to
Right.
say, I thought, because how do they know what we came up with?
Well, a lot of times too, and I'm not faulting any Board of Aldermen, but way back in the day when I was on the Parks and Rec, I mean, we did our job and we did what we were supposed to do, and you're supposed to do this master plan. And this was when Bob O'Quinn was mayor, and he kind of blasted me when we gave the presentation because all this stuff was going to cost like $1 million or more. But he kind of took it the wrong way because it's not like we were recommending all this stuff. This is what the public wanted, and okay. And over the years, it's been picked away at, we've got another basketball court. We've got some of these things that were on the list, and you just pick away at them. So sometimes you kind of have to be there to explain things.
I agree.
Because it's going to be a little overwhelming to them, thinking like, well, what are we looking at this thing for $75,000 for? I would be the same way if I was in their shoes.
So getting back to what you were asking earlier, so are we gonna make one package of recommendations to them? Or are we gonna do Or are we gonna do each one like you were saying, vote, not, like, or do we vote or something, vote on the recommendation or whatever? And then, because what if one of these we don't, just decide we don't want to go to them? There's no need, just, I'm not saying one of them is, I'm just
Right, I hear what you're saying. I think we would do all of them in one
package.
packet. And what we'll do is next month, if it's the board's pleasure, we'll all agree or vote on, this is a recommendation on the tennis court lighting, this is a recommendation on the signs, this is a recommendation on the fee schedule. And do it that way. If that's the pleasure of the board.
Now, when's the next Parks and Rec? Is that what you're saying? It's
So
not
that's,
till,
right, so that's Monday, September 14th, so that would be after your next meeting, and then the board meeting would be the following.
so it'd be in
Thursday.
October.
So it would, there's no, yeah, right, so it would be October, and then the October board meeting.
Does that make
Is
sense?
the 10th.
They won't, Parks and Rec won't meet again to go over what we're talking about tonight
Right.
until after our next planning board meeting.
But then they'll have something really to look at, because we're tonight.
Right, but we won't get to take it to the board alderman until October. Okay,
Right.
is that right? Okay.
That's okay with everybody?
Yeah.
I don't see,
Neil?
oh, I see Neil. I see you there. I thought we lost you. I see you down in the corner there.
Did that make sense, Neil?
I would just underscore that everything that we push forward should be based on the fact that there is a reasonable revenue model that's attached to it. That it's not just a cost with the dream of hopefully we'll get some money back. But it's based on if it's tennis players or if it's restaurants or bars or whatever it is, whatever the item is that we're putting forward has some way to get revenue that's realistic and covers the cost as best possible. I can imagine Bob O'Quinn, maybe he was fatigued by just looking at the cost and that there wasn't enough of a revenue model attached to some of the things. I don't know the circumstance, Jim. I don't mean to, cast aspersions on anything, but quite often revenue models are very weak or non-existent in discussions.
No, in Bob's defense, I think he thought that we were recommending to do all these items that were on the list, and we were not. We were just reporting that that's what the town, the people that took the surveys, that's the items that they wanted to see in the Parks and Recs program. And when you add them all up, it was a lot of money. And it still is today. I mean, I think your current plan now, like the tennis court lighting, I mean, that's a lot of money. So. And
Any canvassing should include a discussion around the potential for revenue, just as if we ask a restaurant, would you be interested in? Their question has to be, what's it going to cost me? How often? And they're going to try to match that up with some sense that they can gain XYZ revenue from it. So when we ask citizens, what would you like out of Parks and Rec? People want the moon, but they don't want to pay the first class ticket to the moon to get there.
Correct. Okay.
So we're not actually right now checking with restaurants and bars or anything like that. We're looking at for the board to give us direction to do something like that. Correct.
Or to pursue it or not pursue it, to delve deeper or. maybe
Yeah, I'm
bad
just-
idea all the way around.
Yeah, you're right, Katie, and Leanne, I think right now, Neil, what Katie and Leanne are saying is we won't do this survey yet. We definitely will do it if the aldermen want us to pursue this, this idea.
And I think then that's part of the message to the board is we've looked into this. This sounds interesting. We think it would require this additional fact finding.
Mhm. And if they say this doesn't sound like anything, then we don't move forward with it.
Yeah, and then we won't,
Yeah.
be wasting anybody's time and.
Yeah, we don't want to waste resources, sure.
Right. But when the time comes, if they do say yes, I'd be more than happy to help you work on that. We could put together together a, a survey form and, go door to door with some of them and see what they say. I'd be happy to help. Probably the rest of us all know a business owner or two that we could talk to direct. So, okay. Do we want to move on to the next item, Katie? If everybody's okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay.
So the tennis court lights. So the range on that proposal that we last got was in January. It was $144,000 to $161,000. When I talked to the rep about it and asked about a card reader, he said, well, so the way it's set up now, this, with this estimate is for 4 poles on the tennis courts, which means if you were gonna have a card reader, you have the card reader connected and it would light up all 4 courts. So if you wanted a card reader and have each individual court usage paid for, you have to add more poles. So with that, you're gonna even take that cost higher. So that was kind of the response about the card reader. So it's even gonna be more expensive than that. Jim, I guess you're the one that told me that the foundation has about 3,500 put away for lights, but that's pretty much it.
That's
When
not
we
much.
just, yeah.
Are
When
the
we
courts
just-
separated by fence? I've never paid attention really over there because I don't play tennis, but are they separated by a fence? Like, what, is
No.
there the one gate that goes into the whole thing?
There are 3 gates. There's one, there's a net that divides where we have our instructor, her court that
Yeah, I've
she
seen
uses
that.
for instruction. And then, so her court, then another court, then there's a scout project that the foundation helped with as well. Little gazebo between the 2, kind of a bench and just a place to put your tennis bag, and then 2 more.
So they
courts.
could, so you're saying if one person puts their card in, everybody can take advantage of it?
Right.
That's- I was thinking if each court had a separator and a door, you couldn't get in the door without paying, or the gate.
Oh, yeah, you can have it a gate, yeah.
But you don't have that
so
for an
there's-
option.
So, the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee asked me yesterday to go back to USTA and see, because they do offer grants. I have checked with them over the years and it's never been enough to pay, to pay for the cost of the lights. And at one time they wanted, you had to have 5 courts for USTA League tennis, but now they have so many different leagues. I don't know if anybody plays tennis. So
I
they
play a
have
lot of tennis.
so many different leagues now that, that 3 courts is enough for like your combos and your mixed doubles and. things
Mixed
like that.
doubles, yeah, 3, but most of them are 5 courts.
Yeah.
So
So
if
that's
to hold a
where-
match down here, you would have to have 5 courts. And I will tell you this, if each court is not lighted, it's hard to see at night. So if you've got lights on the ends on each side, you're not gonna be able to see in that middle court. You just won't.
Even with the new lights they have now?
Yeah, the LED.
Okay,
Yeah.
they're trying to tell me that.
I
it
mean,
would be-
We have those at the club and they're bright, but it's hard to see.
Would it be possible to light one court, and if you wanted to play on a lighted court, you'd have to play on that one specifically? and
Well,
just-
I think what you're saying is if you can get some money from USTA and the local tennis association as well, and could guarantee that USTA could play matches down here, that would be huge.
Oh, yeah.
You'd need 5 courts.
But
You
I think
have to commit, if they
Yeah.
give you money, you have to commit. You also
Right.
have to reline your courts for quick start tennis or
Right.
those
Mhm.
kind of things. And we
For
already have
youth.
lines for pickleball on 3 of the
Yeah.
courts. Yeah, there are a lot of requirements if you get that money. And I, it's never, again, it changes all the time.
Yeah.
I will check on it.
But I would look into it because if they could play like combo, season down here or mixed doubles, then that only requires 3 courts. So, yeah.
I have a couple questions, Katie.
Yes.
So is pickleball is it conflicting with tennis when it comes to USTA?
I
In
don't
other
think,
words, you cannot have a tennis court with those stripings on it or something?
I would have to find those out as far as their grants go, because I don't know.
Okay.
I know, I don't know how you,
We have, at our club, we have, 2 hard courts that have youth markings on them, and we play USTA matches on those if we need to, on the hard courts. I mean, we have soft courts, but if one of the soft courts isn't working or the lights are out or something, then we'll have to move over to that hard court, and we play on those courts
And
in a
are you,
local USTA.
have
Yeah.
you played on pickleball? Those that are lined with pickleball?
No. Mm-mm.
are youth markings kind of like pickleball lines? Maybe not exactly the same, but they're as visible and as,
Yeah.
And
They're
it's-
visible.
okay.
It was a little challenging at first when they put this, but you get used to it.
You get used, yeah. If you play a lot of tennis,
You know, is the request for lighting, is that a nice to have, or is there some large pent up need for it for things like more organized competition rather than, you know, a couple of friends wanting to play after work, you know, in the darker night?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you have the people at work wanting to play afterwards. It's always interfered with our programming because we can't continue lessons in the evening, and that, you know, we always have to look at the daylight hours. So that's definitely been an issue with our programming.
So would a USTA kind of league tournament series type of thing be required to get the utilization under the lights?
They play at all different times, but yeah, they would probably, if they were going to help with the funding, they'd want use of the courts, and I'm sure a lot of their matches would be.
USTA is
Yeah.
USTA matches are only played in the afternoon. The earliest match we have is 6 p.m.
I think the seniors, I think there's another, isn't there another one? that's
The 55
daytime?
and over league, I'm not sure. We have day league, but that's all played at MP.
Just to be clear, you said the afternoon, but then you said 6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m. I meant evening, afternoon.
Okay,
I consider
Okay,
6
got it.
p.m. afternoon during the
Oh.
summer. So,
okay.
but we do hold one of the state tournaments in Wilmington every year. The combo season is here. And so we play at all the tennis courts, Porter's Neck, Landfall, Impey, Echo Farms, Cape Fear. If there's a court, it's utilized. So, and we've even at times played some of the matches at UNCW because we needed the courts. It's a huge tournament.
So we would have to explore what might be conflicting with regard to, or out of alignment with getting to maybe the next level of utilization. What kind of capacity this would represent in the scheme of things throughout the county?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna ask for USTA grant money, then you would have to obviously, I mean, anybody could play on the courts. And it would be, I would imagine if we had a tournament here, that those courts would have to be set aside for tournament play.
Hmm.
So, and reserved.
Katie, are you finding a conflict in demand between pickleball and tennis?
Sometimes, you know, people might want to come out and they'll see the pickleball courts are taken and they don't get to play tennis when they're in town. We've gotten a few complaints, but generally we have it posted when they have their open play, and it's just Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning. So it's out there. It's posted on the courts, you know, when they can play.
So the current scheduling seems to be working through, and people understand it. Once they're aware of it, they understand how to work the system.
And we're finding now that we have the lines out there, we're finding more people coming and reserving the nets and using them on the courts.
Yeah. So putting the lights into the deal is just one aspect of increasing the capacity. I mean, it sounds like the demand would increase if the USTA was to become a significant source of utilization. Maybe that's more of a gut feeling I have, but
Well, yeah, it would definitely be used more. I mean, just having the lights alone will bring more people out looking at evening play. And it's great to go out and play at
Mm.
night.
and what Karen's saying is that 4 lights will not be adequate for the 4 courts.
I mean, I guess it just, I mean, to me, it's nice to have light, and maybe I'm just used to having lights on all the courts, you know? I'm trying to think of what they've done at Impey with the new courts, because they've just added a bunch of new courts at Impey, hard courts. I'd have to, and I just played a match last night, so I'd have to go and look.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But mine was before dark, so we didn't even turn the lights on.
And I can
Just-
ask about that, because I'm sure that Musco Lighting is the one that
Yeah.
did it, and that's who I'm talking to. And I
Yeah,
can
there's a
ask them.
thin, like, streamlined one.
And also what the candle power is, because that could make a big difference. Because even though the LED lights are there, there's, 3 different candle powers that they're showing here.
Yeah.
And if you have lights on every court, they may be using the
Lower.
lower amount. But on 4 courts, someone may have used the lower amount also,
Right.
so that could.
Yeah.
So in some, 4 light poles is kind of a nice to have low key local use, and to do more than that requires a larger revenue stream, an expansion of utilization of the courts, and maybe drives it in even into the direction of more courts down the road, longer term planning.
Well, here again, why don't we send this one the same direction as we did the sign, and see if the Board of Aldermen even wants to do this.
I agree.
Because it's a big ticket item, and there won't be any revenue coming back to even come close.
Better make the sign look cheaper.
That is a true thing, yes. What did Parks and Rec say about this one?
They wanted me to see about the grant, the USTA grant, and if there's any money, how much money.
Well, how about if we agreed, agree with Parks and Rec, pursue the grant, but if,
Right. I have a feeling that if there's no grant, then
then,
it's probably
yeah,
not going to go forward.
And
That's a lot of money.
yeah.
It's
What's
pretty
your-
much what's always happened when I go to USTA, but like I said, it could have changed.
Yeah.
What's the operational cost
It's very minimal with those,
with the
the
LED?
LEDs, yeah.
David, they
So-
just need somebody to change the light bulbs.
Right. So are we agreed that we'll do the same thing and
Add it to this.
add it to the list, but do the ask and say, do you want us to pursue this or not?
And so basically, I'll be coming back to you with more breakdown of costs on the sign, and then whether or not there's a grant.
I'd like to see a significant comparison of the tennis costs around the county. What do people pay to play tennis, and how does that compare to what it would cost to play at Wrightsville Beach? Is there an opportunity there for us to find some revenue? And as well, what do our courts need to have, other than lighting? Do our courts need something to be more attractive to the tennis playing community?
Fifth court for league play. But I don't think they charge, the county doesn't charge for
We-
use.
We pay for every team we sign on to, it's like $30 a team.
And that's USTA.
And that goes to the local USTA. Yeah.
And that's for how long?
But the county
For-
doesn't get any of that revenue.
I have no idea about
Probably
that.
just the USTA does.
I don't
Is that
know.
per season or per
No, it's per team.
match? Oh, per team though?
Per
for-
team, and that, yeah, like it runs through the season, but the
Okay.
season may usually only like, 2.5 months,
Okay, okay.
so.
And I think Indy's really the only one that charges anything for any reservation fees or not, and that's a joint between, that's the joint between the county and the city.
Right.
And then if you're a city resident, you pay X amount. If you're non-city, but it's minimal. You reserve the courts for a couple of bucks, I think, or something, if you want to reserve it. Otherwise, you can just go out there and play.
Yeah.
But I can find out what all those costs are.
Okay.
Anna Martin is probably who you need to talk to. She's the president of the local USTA here.
And there's another Tara.
Tara, she
What's
runs
her last
Envy.
name? Oh, okay.
Tara,
She's the one that.
yeah,
was
she's
gonna
great too.
do Consult with.
Yeah,
the
she's
grants.
a good contact too.
Okay, so.
Terry Ann.
You had some other items from Parks and Rec?
Yes. Okay, talk about message board, the event venue that y'all had talked about. Okay, so they said they, with it being used right now for linear storage, it already has a use. They really weren't interested in going any further with looking at that building and making it an event venue. Because that they just weren't interested in pursuing it. I know y'all have had a discussion about it.
I think that would have made it anyway. I think that would have been a tough one, because that's a big liability.
What's the board's?
Well, the
Pleasure
alcohol
comments.
now, that was another story.
Oh,
They
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
that?
They
Two
were
separate
interested in
items,
pursuing
yeah.
that.
Wow.
These are two that, they were just talking about event venue. but
Some of
as
that
far as-
building and letting people do receptions and, you know, the old.
Well, I know
firehouse.
what we're talking about, but why would they be against that, yet they're for it? I mean, I'm with Jim, I think that's an easy fix,
Well,
renovate it and.
I thought the alcohol was about, the concerts and things like that.
Okay,
Am I
yeah,
wrong?
we've got two different.
Yeah, they're two different
issues
ones.
going on. So the event venue, they said, you know, we're already using that for linear parking as storage. It's got a use right now. So they didn't see pursuing that anymore, because that was gonna be a significant cost to turn that into an event venue. You know, you gotta have the restroom facility. I mean,
There's a lot of expense to redo the
yeah,
building.
and I'm sure, Tony, there's probably, with the building codes, I don't even know.
Well, there was, like you say, remember there was mold upstairs, so
Yeah.
that was a big issue. And there's some things would have to be improved in there, because I think we took out the sprinkler system in the building or disconnected that thing.
So, and then with that, so then we went on to the alcohol use, you know, and permits and everything, and they definitely wanted to pursue that. They felt there was opportunities to make money there. You know, reserving areas for art in the park, wine tasting, you
That's
know,
a
whatever.
great idea.
Taste of Wrightsville Beach, you know.
With the
whatever.
wine tasting this past year, it was huge.
Yeah, so, and then, you know, selling alcohol in the park at the concerts instead of.
People bringing their own.
bringing it. Brown
Yeti
paper bags. So, they definitely like the idea of pursuing that and. seeing that as a money maker.
And were there any other items or was,
And then the boat trailer, they didn't, that was brought up, and you brought that up, and they talked about it a little bit, and then they decided that really required further study, further review, because there was a concern of just offering more parking and bringing more people on already busy.
I agree with that. I think we just raised the ticket so that people who park illegally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which they just did.
Not enough.
so they recommended against the boat trailer parking.
And maybe it needed to be studied a little
It needed to
further,
be
and maybe
studied more.
there's, it's, you know.
What were the questions they were seeking to get answered?
They wanted to look at, you know, how would we do it? Would it be a pay station? How many vehicles could you get in there? And then again, there was the concern of, here we've opened up more parking and bringing more people over here and more traffic over here. And maybe we don't add more parking. So it's just kind of,
Where's the overflow field?
well, it's where the farmer's
Where
market
the
is.
farmer's
Oh,
market is.
okay.
Yeah, so we.
That's going to tear up the grass and.
And we already use it for parking for,
Other events.
especially
yeah,
events.
and really a lot of the boat trail parking is just really busy the weekends, so I don't know that it would fill up every weekend.
Also, then you're gonna have those people running across the street.
Right, you don't have a
Uh-huh.
crosswalk
To
anywhere.
get back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I guess you could easily put a crosswalk in, but.
Yeah, I don't know, I
I'm with,
mean,
I'm kind
I don't know that you couldn't really easily, 'cause you'd have a DOT issue you'd have to deal with, because you'd have to have somewhere for them to go, and you're spilling them just into nothing. Maybe tipping down the sidewalk, I don't know, but
Yeah.
again, you're gonna get DOT.
The way the ramp runs now, everything's striped. The parking spots are striped. And it still is very difficult the way people pull in with the trailers. And some of the trailers are huge. So from an operational point of view, we would probably have to have a reasonably marked field there for people to use and it would be a very specific capacity to handle it.
Right.
Otherwise, it will turn into a free-for-all, which actually with the stripes at the ramp as it exists now can be a free-for-all on weekends.
So it's
So-
along the way where like parks on the side of the streets or by the bridge and used to be under the bridge.
Yeah.
And
I'm just saying within the parking lot itself, it can be a free-for-all.
Oh, yeah.
And with cars, kind of trying to navigate, hoping one will free up and ill-parked vehicles and including trailers. So I don't know, we would have to be prepared for that kind of a mess.
That's just the key word.
I think I agree.
Okay, hold that further study.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So it looks like 3 of the 5.
But there's clearly a need for parking. It's full every weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Just have vehicle parking in there, I mean.
Well, there again, I mean, somebody just brought up a good point, trying to cross the road.
Yeah.
I guess if vehicles parked in there and walked to the beach, they wouldn't be crossing the road, but
do we charge for parking in that public access area?
that's the county.
The boat ramp?
Yeah.
It's the wildlife.
That's
North
the-
Carolina
But-
Wildlife. They handle all that.
That's
And the answer, is no, we don't.
But there is no charge. You
No.
first come, first served. It's,
Yeah, okay.
it's kind of just a shame there isn't more space for them because there's so many people that, I mean, they get out there at 5 o'clock in the morning to get a spot for their trailer.
Somebody needs to open up a ramp. They can make a lot of money.
Yeah, finding the land.
Yeah.
Okay, so, the event, refurbishment, do we just,
It's kind of off the table, isn't it?
or do we ask the question, do they want us to pursue it? And they may just immediately say no.
Sounds like it's off.
I think we ought to ask
Sounds
the
like it's off the table
question.
to me. You said Parks and Recreation, like it's too expensive, and you just said it was mold in there, and to me,
Yeah.
just a guess, it would seem like to me $1 million plus project to get that thing up. It's not to have a party in it and rent it out.
Well, I will say this, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here and thinking like you're thinking, that brick building over off of Wrightsville Avenue, what's
Oh
that
my
venue
God.
called?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's booked out for 2 years,
I
I
figured
mean,
about that.
for events.
I'm in agreement. I'm
For
telling
2
you.
years, it's booked out.
And one of the
Every
It
reasons,
is
weekend.
privately owned, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
making a killing.
I know.
And it's not that big of a facility.
No,
no, and they have parking.
Yeah,
Well,
I said they have a
I'll-
serious parking.
I'll tell you too, here, the wedding hermits that are on the beach and the number of people that ask us, do you have any place on Wrightsville Beach where we could have our reception?
I'm telling you, it's gonna be huge.
But where would they park?
In the open field.
In the open field.
Be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody, needs
Since
to
it's
look
not gonna
into
be
what
used
is
for
truly
boat
I'll
already doing.
I'll put some parking meters over there in that open field. We can make a lot of money.
We'll get you a little booth.
That open field.
Like
But
last
they-
one ago.
They charge like $3,000
Oh.
for,
I mean, it's not cheap.
um,
What if that's
And-
gonna cost to fix that building, you're gonna need.
I'm gonna kind of push it forward a little bit, because the other thing I think is right now, if the town, and doesn't the town borrow money through the League of Municipalities somehow, or?
Most of the time they go out for bids, so most
They
time
do, okay.
it's banks typically.
But right now, I mean, money is cheap.
Mhm.
If there's any time to,
To
Do
do a
something.
renovation.
yeah. And my other reason for wanting to push it is I think as you come onto the beach, I hate to use this term, but I think it's butt ugly. I mean, that's the first impression that people see of Wrightsville Beach is that yellow recycled container, a bunch of scrubby shrubs, a flagpole with no flag on it, and an old metal building staring in the face, and it just looks junky to me. And I think, some attractive building there that,
I agree.
I'm,
I think
I
it's
support
got
you
revenue, but I
150%.
think it's gonna cost some money to get it right, but I think from then on, I think you could probably,
but I think it could be used 7 days a week. I mean, you could, the stuff that you do in the Fran Russ Center now, you could do there during the week.
Perhaps a way to bring
Right.
this into focus is to allow the space next to the garden where the farmer's market is held be rented just as a plot of land, and people bring in their own tent and catering service and the things they need for that, and see if there is a way to take people up on their request. Is there a place that Wrightsville Beach can offer us for a reception, so to
And
speak?
people can, and they can do that now. If they want that,
Yeah.
if you want to put up a tent, they can. Generally, you go back to, you can't have alcohol at
okay.
your
I was
reception.
gonna say, yeah.
and you got porta johns that you gotta have.
Yeah,
Yeah. But see, Taste of Wrightsville Beach would have it there in a heartbeat every year, and
Mhm, for the alcohol.
They will.
And we pay thousands of dollars to put on the Taste of Wrightsville Beach. And so that's money that could be coming into the town.
Do you remember, after Florence, we had the fundraiser in the parking lot at Blue Water? That was done so
That was-
nicely,
Yeah.
because
I
of all the
remember.
different
Yeah, I
tables
remember.
and the food. There was so much food and there was alcohol. I don't know how that happened.
That's Blue Water's property.
Yeah.
Private property.
Oh,
So they can
so
do it.
that worked out. And
Yeah.
it was raining that night, misty rain.
Yeah.
And it was perfectly done.
So
Well,
if
yeah,
that's-
I like your idea. That's,
And
and
Tim, I
then
like the idea.
if
of
that
the
starts
alcohol.
making them a lot of money and activity, then they renovate the building.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There again, you kind of prove the income stream and then take it from there.
If the elephant in the room is the town allowing alcohol, then I think that's what we should put on the table for them to definitively decide, forget it. We're not going to waste any more time thinking about it. Or how could that be operationalized in a safe manner? What are the restrictions
Well,
they feel we
you know,
should think
every city in the state of North Carolina does it. Charlotte, Raleigh, Cary.
Yeah.
They all do it. Wilmington, downtown Wilmington, you go to venues, it's the sun.
Riverfest.
Well, even when they used to have the sundown concerts every Friday night, it's all on the streets.
And we allowed it on our sidewalks for a bar, a restaurant. So we
So-
kind of opened up.
Opened up the
We've
door.
kind of opened.
And
the door.
again, we can take baby steps. We can just say only wine and beer for starters and try that, which would still be successful. And then take it, the next step if you want to include spirituous
a lot of
liquors
inquiries?
as the wildlife.
And alcohol, that's the biggest.
What's
Yeah.
that?
I asked her, did she get a lot of inquiries for wedding receptions and stuff? And she said, yeah, but alcohol's the big turnout
and use of the recreation center. There's no alcohol.
in there.
Right.
But I say it's right. One of the problems we've got on the beach, problem's probably the wrong word. A sticky subject on the beach has been the bars and alcohol and all that. And I know that they're trying to get some of it under control and having the past, but now, and I'm for the alcohol, don't run events and things like that, I get that. But if we're looking at bringing in something, big events outside under a tent or either in a building, you're talking about bringing more alcohol onto a beach that's already, and sometimes we have a lot of problems with people overserved and, causing a ruckus or a problem. And now we're talking about down there, now we're talking about putting something right here that's gonna allow somebody, and bringing in alcohol. I think there's gonna be, and for allowing people come from on the other side of the bridge to have parties, which is totally fine. But I think you're gonna find some residents that are going to say, well, don't we have, enough problems at this end of the beach with alcohol, and now we're gonna have something going on over here with alcohol, and somehow all that's gonna,
Well, no, I hear what you're saying, but just for an example, and then again, I guess we need to move on, but, for example, every year that we've had Taste of Riceville Beach, I mean, we've had 600 some people attend it, and it's.
But now you're talking, yeah, but that's just something that's done once a year. We're talking doing this every week.
Right.
And or 7 days or something going on.
Yeah, and I hear you. I think probably what we ought to do is, if we're in agreement, is go ahead and again, ask the board if this is something they want us or someone else on the island to pursue, whether it be a planning board or us or.
Well, I think timing, if you ended at 10 o'clock, the problems with the alcohol, at the other end of that beach, they occur after 10 o'clock, after 11 o'clock, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning.
3 o'clock.
Nobody's gonna have a wedding reception to, and that's where I think
You
you
go
can
past
limit.
10?
Well, maybe past 10, but past,
Well, we don't go to the same weddings.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no, I'm just saying, they're not gonna go that late into the evening or anything.
Well, and you might, okay,
Three.
so we're limited
But
to how many people too in the rec center. And, some of it would be, like the outdoor, I don't know, is it gonna go on as long as it would maybe if you're at a reception indoors?
But then you got a noise issue too. You've got condos over here,
Right.
you got homes over here. Then you've got a competition. Blue Water, these places that rely on our receptions to make money. They're gonna be like, well, now we gotta compete with the town and, our restaurant.
Well, that's
Yeah.
free.
Well, there again, we do have a lot of people waiting.
Yeah, I agree.
How about if can we blanket agree that we'll just send all these to the aldermen to get their feedback if they want these things pursued or not?
Everything but the trailer parking?
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
the
the trailer parking, I think we kind of.
And that's pretty much what the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee said. Y'all were kind of in line. with
Okay, so even the
everything, like-
event venue, they were, okay.
Right, so,
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Nixon, the trailer parking, simply because of the fact that y'all brought up of trying to cross the road.
There's a lot of hair in this.
That could be dangerous.
So that's 4 things. Four recommendations.
what's
The
the
trailers would tear up the grass, just
Yeah, the turning.
the way they turn them.
I've got 3 things that y'all were kind of, the message board, which a little bit different in, because they were talking about using what we already have and going ahead, proceeding with putting messages out there. And I get that y'all are saying, let's look at the cost of getting a digital board and just kind of mixing that.
No,
Or
I
go
think
ahead
we're
and try
saying,
that.
we're saying pursue the idea,
With the
but in
personal
order,
messages.
but we won't even do the testing messages if the Board of Aldermen says, no, we don't want to pursue it.
Okay.
So that would be one item, the message board.
And then come back with the costs included with that. Okay.
And then we've got the alcohol use.
Alcohol, tennis courts.
An event venue.
Okay, and y'all want to proceed with the event.
Sounds like it to me. Event
Is
venue.
that,
I'm in
Yeah.
favor
I'm
of
in
pursuing
favor of
that.
pardon me?
I'm in favor of pursuing the event venue.
Do we need to vote?
Yeah, let's vote and make it official.
Yeah.
So do you want to do them one by one? The message board, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No,
The event venue, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The alcohol use, all in favor, say aye.
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 Neil, okay, I see his
He's
hand
raised
going up
his hand every
there.
time.
And were those all the items?
Tennis court.
Tennis
Oh,
courts.
tennis
Lights.
courts. Lighting. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
I would say I.
I'm in favor of the looking into the grant.
That's what I'm in
Right,
favor.
Yeah.
so-
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Right,
Let me
because I'm
read that.
still
Yeah.
coming back to you again before we go with the
Right, right.
regulation work. So I'm gonna bring back a little bit more information so that you have
Okay.
exactly what we would.
So let me rephrase that. Katie will pursue the grant options. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
I was a no on the event venue. Right?
oh, Leanne was a no on the event venue. Okay.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, that was to look into it.
That's to ask the aldermen if they want us to look into it.
Right, okay.
And we will make sure that it's presented the way you had suggested, Neil, where, we try it out with the tents first and, see if there's a track record there.
Got it,
Now,
thank you.
Are we going to, do we need to look at the fee structures anymore, or did we conclude that they are what they are? Did the Parks and Recs Committee think there's any opportunity for movement there at all?
We didn't, the last thing I thought y'all had said was looking into the cost allocation for Neil had suggested it, he'd like a total cost allocation. And then you had said something about we might need a professional to come in and do that for us. I can kind of throw together, I would have to get, finance involved and, accounts payable, HR, payroll, but, I'd have to go through all the departments and try to, get something together and, everybody give a general idea of what their role and cost is and supporting Parks and Rec. I mean, I could probably get that together. But we didn't look any further at fees at this point.
Okay. Is it?
I can paraphrase what I said at the last meeting, and that was that I would like a placeholder out there for a greater transparency around the full cost allocation of the facilities that are used, the cost of maintenance and long-term development of those facilities in behalf of how it's used for Parks and Rec. And that, the suggestion of a professional coming in, it is a profession to do that kind of a cost analysis. I think the end goal is that it's the foundational basis to make decisions on some programs staying in the on the menu and some leaving the menu, and also a way to look at how to bring new things into play for the Parks and Rec. Every time the master plan is put together, the wish list comes up, but the wish list doesn't get executed because the funding isn't there. So the objective is to be able to develop a basis for longer term funding solutions for facilities or equipment. One of the examples was the mat, the handicap accessibility mat for the beach, something that's been, desired for a long time, and numerous people have come to the Board of Aldermen meetings seeking a solution to that. And I don't know where it stands now, Katie, but that's just an example of how do we get something sooner rather than, multiple years later, or if never, that has a high desirability, as well as better bike lanes and stuff like that. So that's the reason behind the transparency, to understand how to make changes in the course of the offerings and to whittle out things that are not covering themselves, or even coming close, I should say.
And I think that's what, the Board of Aldermen are looking at, or want us to look at.
Right.
So anything that Katie can do to enhance the transparency along the, the lines of questions that came up in our first meetings. And I go back to the email that I had sent in in advance of that last meeting. That's where my desire is, to understand fees and fee structure and the funding program.
So you're good to,
So, I mean, I can try and put that together. I can say some of the things like beach matting and bicycle lanes. There's no funding that unless you get grants or you get private donations. That's not something that, we charge for, or we, no money's gonna come into that unless we're able to get funding for it. As programs now, individually, they pay for themselves, or they don't, they get cut. So,
okay,
but I'll do my best to put something together,
Great.
a spreadsheet together.
Thank you.
all right, we'll have another shot at that one next month, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. So we'll move on to agenda item B. Review and discuss a text amendment for front yard setback requirements on oceanfront lots. And we'll hear from, oh, okay. Might be in trouble.
I know better.
There's a lot of people sitting out there in the thing.
How are they gonna come in? 2 by 2?
Are they still live?
Mm-hmm.
Is everybody still here?
Oh,
Is that what
yes.
you're saying?
Mhm.
Yeah, you can, before you
can
turned
see
it
it.
off, you can see the people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a whole group of them out there.
Oh my gosh.
You got, I'm sure you got phone calls and emails from there.
They didn't get them. I sent
I don't know if
them
everybody's
to.
gonna wear them, so. I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
we need to put these on when the public comes in.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, can you hand me one? I don't have one.
Oh, sure, sure.
Thank you.
I'll go to the back door, this door here, so they can just stop, they can
Okay.
bypass and go straight to the.
Okay.
I'll do the presentation first, then after I get through, we'll bring them in.
All right.
This may be good because they won't be able to recognize us if they don't like it.
Unfortunately.
Just make sure they talk loudly, because when I wear a mask, I get down. I don't know why, it affects my hearing. Worst thing.
Neil, can you see the presentation?
I can see the presentation. Is it necessary to have the next slide there? Because it kind of diminishes the
Oh, well,
main slide,
probably not.
unless that's something I control. You did have it originally. It didn't show that, and then somehow it got into this mode.
Weird, because I don't see that on my screen.
Oh, you're not seeing the next slide?
No.
Oh.
Let's, I mean,
I
we
can-
can we just do it this way, I guess.
I can live with it.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's more better. Thank you.
Okay, we'll just go this route.
Okay.
The creamer.
I'm assuming your font is not going to get any smaller than what I'm looking at now.
No,
All
I
right.
like to keep them consistent.
Okay. Chairman Smith and members of the planning board, this is a staff-initiated text amendment we're going to be discussing tonight. The first one is going to apply to the zoning districts R1 and R2. And if you remember, in January, we had a similar text amendment that came to the planning board. And it was changing the definition, how staff came up with lot frontage. At that meeting, the planning board did vote a favorable recommendation to the Board of Aldermen to forward that to them for that change of definition. And what that did was, if you look at this slide here, this is our current ordinance. And this is, right now, we're talking about just oceanfront lots, the first text amendment is. So this is an oceanfront lot. If you look at the current ordinance today, it says the setback is going to be 15 feet from here. You take 7.5 there. The other ordinance said 7.5 here, 15 feet here, just like this lot. This is an interior lot. This would be correct. So the one that came before us in January would be 7.5 and 15. And also, this planning board was a part of the ad hoc committee I think all of y'all are at that one meeting that we had in March. So this went to the planning board in January, went to the Board of Aldermen in January the next week. At the Board of Aldermen level, it was turned down. There was some opposition there. If you remember at our planning board, the first time we didn't have any opposition whatsoever at that meeting. But at the Board of Aldermen, there were some individuals there who opposed it. So the Board of Aldermen turned it down 3-2 to form an ad hoc committee to study the setbacks. So in March, we came together as a group. We only met one time, as I remember. This initiated staff text amendment is not a recommendation from our board, but we did discuss these things at that meeting. We discussed having graduated setbacks or 10-foot setback. So since that time, staff started looking at it, and we were kind of directed to bring this back to the planning board again. And we brought 2 text amendments to you. So the first one we're talking about is doing, can we go to the next slide, Robert?
Sure.
This next text amendment, if we move it forward, is going to read, for those lots located in the R1 and R2 residential zoning districts on which are located on the oceanfront, which this is, and are used as sole means of access for immediately adjacent oceanfront landlocked parcels zone R1 or R2 residential may have a front yard setback of no less than 10 feet. So what this first text amendment does is, instead of, this is going to be more restrictive than the one we looked at in January. So instead of 7.5, we're going to say, we're bringing this forward for a 10-foot setback, and then 7.5, 7.5, and then there's an access easement or would have to be here. So the first text amendment is just for 10 feet. And it's just for those oceanfront lots there. We feel like the text amendment is consistent with our CAMA land use plan, the policies. The public notice, this was advertised in the Star News, July the 26th, 2020. And also it's on the town's website, we put it on. And also it's still on the website as of today. So, but there's no requirement to notify property owners on text amendments. We hear those every month. We're going to have some more next month on other things. So some questions came up about property owners being notified, but they don't have to be notified on these. So the first text amendment that you'll be looking at tonight is to change this from 15 feet to 10 feet. So that's the first text amendment we're looking at. And if you've got any questions, I'll try to answer those, but that's in a nutshell, this first text amendment.
I have a question, and that, just to refresh my memory, this only applies to the corner oceanfront
Yes.
lots that have an interior lot
Yes, that's correct.
beside them.
Yes.
And through the course of the entire island, it really only affects 11 lots that we've studied.
Right.
And those are all between Stone Street and Mallard Street.
That's correct.
And one other question, I know we asked it last time, but just to verify or clarify, fire department, fire chief's okay with this 10-foot access? It
Yeah,
works for
the
that.
access was passed, maybe some of you were on that committee then, but this only goes to one lot. If
Right.
this were to go more than 100 feet, it has to be a certain different width. If they fight a fire, typically, they're not going to drive down that. They're going to fight it from here with the air or
Right.
whatever.
Okay.
And that's already, the 10-foot access easement is already part of the ordinance.
Right.
All we're looking at is, are we going to change this from the 15 feet to a 10-foot on this text amendment here?
Tony, are we looking at these backwards? Because we're going to be the next text.
Well, I don't know. I think when you look at them, the question is they both could, this would apply, okay, just to these oceanfront lots. Okay, that's what that applies. Once we get to that next one, it could apply to the whole street or possibly this lot also. But that was brought to us.
I understand
Staff
that,
looked at it, but
but I'm just looking at.
Tony, I have a question.
Go ahead, Neil.
I'm not sure if I heard correctly. There's between Mallard and Stone, there's 11 lots.
there's approximately, I don't know the exact number. It just probably depends on who you asked, but there's only a handful of those properties there.
Okay, but I understood from some letter that was written, and I don't recall who wrote the letter during the past week, indicated that 8 of the 11 are non-conforming on setback currently.
Well, I think if you remember in that first meeting, I think Robert and I put together, there were a lot of nonconformities there. So even when we get to the next text amendment, there are a lot of nonconformities. Yes, sir, they are. I don't know the exact number.
Okay, well, I just want to put this out there, and at the appropriate time for it to be explained in this, in your presentation or discussion, I would appreciate it. But, you know, I did look at the reference materials that Robert provided last week to the questions I had. And then I've walked all these streets, but I didn't have a tape measure to measure. I didn't know that it felt a little intrusive to go measure everything. But I tried to eyeball it and understand, is this a 15-foot setback or is it not a 15-foot? So if you can somehow visually indicate where this is currently a problem, such that if a building is rebuilt on that spot, it's not going to come back looking the way it is today.
There's several areas, and we're talking about a lot of the streets. I don't know how many numbers there would be, but there's a lot of those, and I forget the percentage that we came up with. I think we came up with there was an average of 8 to 10 feet was the average of some of these setbacks. Instead of 15, it was an average of 8 to 10 feet or something like that. You know?
I wish I had my tape measure when I was walking it then, because some of them look deceptively like they're okay. Okay.
Have it in here.
In the
That we
old-
had that.
In your old packet of January, we did do some comparisons of the encroachments, and we did have a number, and I don't know what that number is, Will, exactly. Because we do have surveys on some of them, Robert and I had to, we had surveys on the majority of them.
So. Does Robert have the old stuff in that?
I've got it right here. I'm getting ready to share it for you.
Yeah, because the one tells you what those different house numbers.
Tony, there's some cases where the two lots bring their vehicles around to the east side, essentially the ocean side. And if the interior lot, let's say, is destroyed and gets rebuilt, it inherently would not have any access given what we're talking about. Hopefully I'm explaining that clearly.
There are some, for example, I'm just going to use Augusta Street. If you remember, the interior lot on Augusta Street had no access, had a 5-foot walk-in access.
Yeah.
Now, if everything happens, it's going to have a 10 or 15-foot access to get to that structure. There are some other ones around that could have not much of an access at all, or less than 10 feet, or it could be, I know maybe one situation where it is considered to the east of the houses. There's a few of them to the east. Let's say Mallard Street, those condominiums, I think the access is to the east side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some on Columbia.
Yeah, there is some on Columbia too, yes.
Mallard, that's the front.
Yeah.
We don't have the original graph on Tim's PowerPoint.
And that's fine. But tonight, we're looking at, like I say, this text amendment of 10 feet, the first one. So we had, let's see, we said an average mean was 10.4 when we started looking at some of these.
An average what?
10.4 feet was the average setback. So most of them were not meeting the 15-foot setback.
I can go back to the original.
So just go back to the.
And all of those houses of a prior to a certain date?
There's no date limit.
Yeah, some of them are older, Neil. Some of them are prior to 2008 probably. And the reason why would probably be interpretation of the ordinance at different times, or definitions that have changed, or the person like myself interpreting the ordinance from those times and the period before me and others. That's why you're seeing, and then prior to probably the 70s or 80s, a lot of surveys were not required like they are today.
Okay.
So some of that would be.
Can you clarify for me what the Columbia Street ruling is? It was,
What happened with the Columbia Street, the staff issued zoning permits for some duplexes at the end of East Columbia Street. During the process, the homeowners on the street said that staff was not interpreting the ordinance correctly. It went to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment decided with the homeowners that the setback should be taken off the street side here, the 15 feet. So before construction started, they had to redesign, and the setback is off of the street side.
and are those the units that are to the north side of Columbia Street or the south side?
To the north.
Okay, and can I assume that the ones on the south side do not meet the current setback?
I don't think they do. We probably have a measurement. I don't think they do, Neil.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, looking at it on Google Maps, it does not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the Columbia Street ruling basically says that it's a 15-foot setback along the street.
It does, but if you look at Columbia Street, remember, it's a little bit different. The street goes past the house, right?
Okay,
So it's a little bit different. The pavement goes to just about to the end here.
okay.
And when we started looking at these after Columbia Street, that's when we really started looking at them. And then there's been different interpretations. We had to actually go back, and the interpretation at that time was this lot here had to have 15 feet. We changed that somewhat several years after that, this interior lot. We felt like.
Which lot are you pointing to, Tony?
Well, the interior lot, let's say that
On what street?
any of the streets, the
Okay.
interpretation, we did a text amendment some years later to change that.
Okay, thank you.
Explain to me the street end. So the street end on Columbia, you're saying goes quite a bit further out than the street
Yeah, I
end.
think that's the biggest difference on Columbia Street. If you look, you go always past those houses, right? On these other streets, the street may, it depends on what you ask. The pavement may end here or somewhere in here.
Well, that was like the house on Raleigh Street. The street did not go past the beginning of the property.
Yeah,
It had-
but on that one, we enforced the 15
15
foot.
feet, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
We did on Ross.
Okay,
Yes.
that's another example where y'all did make them do 15, okay.
Tony, a statement was made that that there are a number of lots, corner lots, built not to the 15-foot setback, but after the Columbia Street ruling.
Well, like I say, it's interpretation, I think. That may be an individual's opinion that it wasn't, but, I was here from that point on and feel like the interpretation of the ordinance was correct, except on Columbia Street.
So I guess can you point out the examples of where that's the case, where they were built not to the 15-foot setback?
I don't know all the addresses, but let's just say that if an easement, or there could have been a street, let's say some of the properties from Johnny Mercer's to Mallard Street, there's actually some type of street right here. The question is was that a through street? And you see all them staff went from 15 feet here and 7.5 there. Those are all pretty consistent.
Because they were interpreting the access easement as a street, I believe.
We've all,
Okay.
It's not.
well, I did a survey of every street and we're treating them as though they're streets for the survey, about 7, 8 years ago.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
disagree with that.
And then my only other question, and again, this text amendment is for 10 feet. 10 feet. The next one will be a little bit different.
Okay.
So any other questions for Tony at this time? And then we're going to address these one at a time, right?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll go through this one and ask the public to give comments and,
And vote,
yes,
and then move on to the next
and
one.
then move on to the next. Yes.
So, if it's the board's pleasure, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time.
And I think Robert's going to go get them, so we'll listen.
And I guess Robert's going to bring them in as they're comfortable,
Yes.
so we don't.
Jim, do you know how many people want to comment?
I do not, I haven't.
It's probably 8 or 10.
There's quite a few. I'm gonna be careful.
I think you limit their comments on the
Yeah.
name and address.
And good evening.
Hello. Hello.
I am Carlton Prickett, better known on Augusta Street as the husband of Susan and the father of Warren Prickett. We have owned the property at 11 East Augusta since 1978. And thank you for allowing me and many others to voice our opposition to the proposed text amendment that would change the setback from 15 feet to 10 feet for 15 Augusta Street. First and foremost, the owners of 15 Augusta Street and the interior lot bought those two lots with the knowledge that the setback was 15 feet from Augusta Street for 15 Augusta Street. They graciously, they allowed an easement to be built or to be dedicated to the town or to the interior lot of 10 feet so that they would have access from Augusta Street over to that interior lot. The owners of the interior lot had difficulty in trying to sell the house for many years because it had no access. It didn't have access to ingress or egress, could not park under it. Now they have built a house that is a large structure on that interior lot, and they will have access to that house. The text amendment, in my opinion and others, would open up Pandora's box. Once you allow a 15-foot easement to be reduced to 10 feet, it would not only affect ocean, it would not only impact oceanfront lots, and I question whether or not there are that many ocean lots that are available between Wings or Columbia Street up past even Johnny Mercer's Pier that would be affected by that. It is clear to me that it is intended only for the builders and the owners of lot of 15 Augusta Street that this will affect. They will allow them to build a bigger house. If you go to Augusta Street, you can look down the line from the Arab's house, which is probably 13 Augusta Street. They had to abide by the 15-foot setback. Henry Fondle on the other side, on the south side of Augusta Street, abided by the 15-foot setback. The houses on Raleigh Street had to abide by the 15-foot setback. And the owners of these two lots, when they bought the two lots, knew exactly what the setback was going to be. They certainly could have designed two houses, since they owned both lots, to not only conform to the setback requirements, but could have built houses that are very aesthetically beautiful, and the house that they built is going to be a beautiful house and is an addition to our street that we are not resisting. But we have been there for over 42 years. Others on Augusta Street have been there much longer than we have. And to see the setback become 10 feet is simply not acceptable to us. It does not conform to the rules that have been set. And you mentioned other lots or other houses on between the area that you proposed that have not abided by the setbacks. How old are those houses? Our house in Fran was destroyed, or it was knocked off of its foundation. And some of you don't remember Wright Holman, but Wright Holman did our construction. And he had to abide by the 15-foot setback. We may have gotten a slight little advantage to have steps that go from our front porch down. But I know that he had a difficulty in doing that. And if you measure our lot, it is 15 foot to the base of the house from Augusta Street. And that was in 1997. It just does not make any sense to me unless it is for the ability to build a bigger house, to allow, in this instance, one builder, one owner to vary from the 15-foot setback. You set a rule, he ought to abide by it. If he built the house, he should have designed it, both houses, to conform to the rule. I respectfully request that you deny or that you do not allow this text amendment. I respectfully ask that you keep it at 15-foot setback and that you not reduce it. It affects everyone on Augusta Street, and most of us on Augusta Street are old owners, older than me. We watched our children grow up there, and we've grown old there, and we don't want a 10-foot setback on Augusta Street on that one lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Hayward Newkirk. I'm a real estate appraiser, and I live at 1403 Airlie Road. I am here tonight specifically to just lend a little thought about the long-term implications of this change in setback. Beach communities, value is often created by view corridors. And shrinking a view corridor, in this case, you're setting a precedent, and you're going from with a 50-foot street with two 15-foot setbacks. That's an 80-foot view corridor. You're changing that, or you're setting a precedent to change that from down to a 50-foot right-of-way corridor, and then a 10-foot setback on top of that, which is the 70-foot corridor. The drop in view corridors of 80 to 70 feet doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but it's a 12.5% reduction in the view corridor. And you guys had a couple of really good site plans up earlier. If you look at most of the streets on Wrightsville Beach, I think there are 25 streets between the Surf Club and the Coast Guard Station that have a similar single-family residential design that have been there historically. And if you go look at those 25 streets, the houses have pretty unobstructed view corridors, second row back to third row. If you reduce that view corridor from 80 feet to 70 feet, it is going to have a substantial impact on the view corridors of the second and third homes. That's four homes per street times 25. That's 100 homes on Whitesville Beach that if you allow this precedent to be set, they're probably going to have some type of impact on their value long term. And so while I'm not here to address individual values on Augusta Street, as a professional real estate appraiser and somebody who's been doing this since 1992, it is my professional opinion that this reduction, even though it sounds like it's only 5 feet here, precedent it would set would have a significant impact on future property values on these residential streets. So typically what you see, and just reviewing some listing data before I came in here, there's about a 15 to 20% difference in listing price on oceanfront versus second or third row. Just a cursory look before I came in here. It's my professional opinion that if this precedent is set, the difference between oceanfront and second and third row is going to increase substantially. And the last thing I wanted to say is, you guys did a great job. I saw an overview that said there were 11 lots that fall into this one, I guess, one particular scenario. Is that correct, Mr. Wilson? So if you go back and you look, I also heard something like, well, the average is 10.4 feet right now. Okay. I bet you most of those are older historic homes that have been there for a while. They're smaller, they're more modest. Well, if you go back and look at those instances where there's 11 lots, I think I counted when it was up there, I think there are between 25 and 30 homes that are going to be impacted by the change in the view corridor. And Wrightsville Beach, historically, one of the attractive things about it from a real estate perspective is you walk down the streets and they have these expansive views at the end of the right of way. This has the potential to create a tunnel effect at the end of each street, which long term, in terms of real estate value and real estate impact, in my professional opinion, is not going to be positive. It will have a negative impact. So thank you for your time, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Smith and other members of the planning committee. My name is Halbert Jones. I'm representing the Halbert Jones family LLCs. We're showing the lots from the even lots from 4 to 16 on Augusta Street, and also the residents at 6 Augusta Street. We are in opposition to this amendment. I'm going to take this off. I'm sorry. We are in opposition to the amendment, and you may have gotten my email about this, and I'm just going to kind of summarize that. But, we feel that, first of all, it is not necessary, as has been proven by the sale of the house at 15 Raleigh Street, with the lot there and the house that's subsequently been built there, which to me looks like a fine and worthy house, and it was built according to the existing setbacks. The other thing is that oceanfront corner lots are the most desirable lots on the beach, regardless of how wide you can build, because they have not only the frontal view, but the side view through a wide view. So I think the fact that the Roush family paid a premium actually for that corner lot on Raleigh Street speaks to that. The other factor is that builders today, and particularly builders who are speculating, tend to build as high and wide as they can. And while I don't fault anybody for doing what he can to maximize his profits, I think that expanding the building envelope is going to just have a real negative effect on the neighbors. what's good for us in 1B should be good for Gander as well. And that's our main argument on this. It's, you know, I think if you've seen the house that's under construction, it is certainly pushing every envelope it can as far as its building envelope. So you can expect more of the same. The other thing I'd speak to is that in building to the maximum limit, you basically are putting up walls, and by putting up walls along the long side of a building, you're creating even more of a tunnel effect. Most of the houses on our street have verandas and lower roofs. Most of them are actually lower structures, and I think it adds to the charm. The other thing I'm concerned about is by changing the setback on the corner lots, ironically, you may be encouraging the demolition of older houses that are non-conforming because they have a value, because they're non-conforming, but by changing the formula there, it could be hastening their destruction. So those are my main points on this issue. That's some other issues, opinions about option 2, which I'll be able to show you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you very much.
Hello. I'm Henry Fonville. My wife Lee is out in the outer room. I was blessed to grow up on Raleigh Street. My wife grew up on Augusta Street. And so we have a lot of history. And I've been through this whole construction thing after the hurricane. Carlton Prickett was the first speaker. He was a lawyer here in town. His wife had to leave. Susan Prickett asked me to read this. She just had to leave their grandchild's having a birthday party tonight.
Oh.
We, the owners and visitors at Riceville Beach, are proud that our town leaders have been able to keep us from becoming like Long Beach or other high-density beach towns. Our hope is that we will not allow bigger and bigger houses to be built on small lots. The setback established in good faith and with important consent should not be sacrificed or changed to allow developers to build oversized, inappropriate buildings which detract from our beautiful historic setting. That was her name. On our street, on Augusta Street, you just heard from Albert Jones, who controls 6 lots. The Pricketts have 2 lots. The Arabs, who I'm staying in the house tonight, have 1 lot right next to 15 and 17. And then my lot is over across the street on the south side. And then the Rollins have 2 lots. So together, there's 12 lots that are represented here tonight. They're all outside. Steve King's here. Excuse me. Steve King's here as well. There's 13 lots. And also Penny Tillery is outside as well, who's across on Augusta. As it was said, Tim had to build a 15-foot setback on his house. He just built on 15 Raleigh Street, just delivered that house last year. The Arabs, after Hurricane Fran, rebuilt their house. And I have pictures of all our houses when they were all at ground level. My house, the Prickett's house, and my house was known as the car house, by the way. And it originally didn't have parking. It was in the street down below. When I was a kid, the ocean used to break underneath it. We used to go play underneath it. It was crazy neat house. And all our houses were down basically at same level. Mine was a couple of steps up to the Prickett's, a couple of steps with the Arabs. But after Hurricane Fran, we rebuilt. So I rebuilt just to be able to use my house. The Pricketts and the Arabs raised their house. 10 years later, so about 2009, I took my house and raised it and moved it as best I could. So it was a grandfathered structure. And the new expansion of my house was under Tony's direction. And Wright Holman was the contractor, built it. The expansion could only be 15 feet. What's going on today is the big houses, and I'm not here to negotiate, to describe, my architecture versus other people's architecture, because that's obviously Some people drive white cars, some people drive red cars or whatever. But, and that's my house on the south side, okay? So I went and built a house that was really reminiscent of all the beautiful older houses around, the Avenger House, the Scott House. That's architecture I tried to do. This is the house that's being built now on 17, so the interior lot. This interior lot is being used with what's called unusable space. Have y'all discussed unusable space here in this? Okay. So unusable space is space within the house, and this is approximately 40% of the second floor of this house. Well, it is going to be a roof structure that you will walk through in order to get the volume on the second and third floor of the house. Well, including the sand, it's a 4-story house. So they're building to the 70% rule in terms of the size of the house. So let's just call it 3,500 square feet. But the volume of this house is 4,500 feet. Am I being clear on that? Is that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Neil, can you see these?
I know what he's talking about. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay. So they're pushing the volume of the house up higher. So within the restrictions of what they're building, they dug down to get more height. Not sure how that works. They dug down. Then they did 40 feet from the street, which is how it's, what the height is. So they expanded their envelope by digging down and then having almost a flat roof. Historically, roofs at the beach have had nice pitch to them. And now, so people can build more and more height, they're building these flat roofs that makes the volume up higher. And I question whether or not this should be allowed at Rice Beach, because you're creating the biggest volume you can build next to your neighbor. And I have tons of pictures I'd be glad to send everybody. And by the way, back, thank you very much for your service. It's a big deal. And thank you for receiving all our emails last week. This is on the front of the house. On the third floor off the sand, or the second livable floor, they're building a infinity hot tub pool on the ocean. Now, I'm not here to argue if that's, yes or no, obviously they should be able to build a hot tub and pool if they want to. But should it be on the third floor of the house? I have no idea what the safety ramifications of this are. But what made this possible to put this hot tub and pool on the third floor of this house was that unusable space on the second floor of the house. So they're trading spaces. And now they're going to have this on the third floor off the sand and then bedrooms on the fourth floor. The next lot we're talking about, they want to build the same thing next door. So the difference between 35 and 40 feet is a big deal because it just gives them a larger floor plate with which to design this. Now, I want to tell you that not all this group, but 3 of us, Halbert, Elizabeth, and Susan and I met with the Conleys before this meeting today. And I really appreciate them taking the meeting because I wanted them to see the history about how we got there. And as Tony can attest, back before Fran, my house didn't have parking. And it's been a labor of love all these years. And so we eventually got hurricane sand, used some hurricane sand to get parking. So Tony, I appreciate you helping us along the years. Lived in that house for 10 years, then improved it. This report that they provided you on this for this change. The closing remarks of this are, that 90% of the structure is on setbacks. Well, as we talked about all night, those are a lot of old. If you do something new, you have to conform. As my house conformed on my expansion. The Arabs, Sweet Arabs, which are right next door to this, lifelong people, two apartments, they had to go back 15 feet. They're talking about the 10-foot access agreement. I just want to be clear, because I'm a real estate guy, commercial real estate developer. The 10 feet access can only be granted by the person when they buy the lot. So the Conleys very shrewdly bought the inside lot for about $900,000. And then they bought the outside lot to give themselves access. There's nothing Tony or anybody here can do to give somebody 10 feet of access. The McLeans who had this house before only had 5 feet access. They could have made an arrangement with somebody else to get access, but quite frankly, the McLeans never wanted to pay for it. Never wanted to help anybody do anything in order to get that. So they never got it. Smartly, the Conleys bought the interior lot and the exterior lot. So by combining those two lots and owning both structures, they've already made a handsome amount of money. So now they're coming to you to try to get this added benefit, build a bigger structure and the same volume. So again, if it was just about the building size, the size of the house, I think we could all probably agree very quickly. But what they're going to do is they're going to add this other volume to the house, unusable space, excuse me, to make the volume high, to build this very similar house over on the lot, restricting the view, restricting the air. And I will close by saying, I think in the 70s here at Wrightsville Beach, they successfully slowed down the condo development and kept it from becoming Myrtle Beach or Carson City. I think we're at that point now again, where the planning board and the Board of Aldermen need to really look at what's being done and come up with a comprehensive plan about what is allowed. And of course, in our opinion, setbacks. This whole paper of trying to redefine what the setback is, based upon the fact the road doesn't go all the way into the road. It's just a bunch of hocus pocus reasons for trying to say why the setback should be switched from the front to the back of the side of the road. And Tony, may I ask you a question? There is an issue in that there's like 40 feet of street from the end of Augusta Street to what's called the end of where the public access is. And I happened to be there one time when Mrs. McLean, it used to be full of potholes. And Mrs. McLean actually fell walking back there one time, and we had the rescue squad out there and took care of her. But she did sprain her ankle very badly. Thank you for, in the last 10 years, you guys have been filling that up. It's gravel, it's flat. And the mayor recently, 6 months ago, came in and put more gravel in there, made it flat, because it literally had potholes in it. It's an issue because cars come around and turn around. It's a lot of public use of our street, which is fantastic, but we don't really have a place to turn around. And so everybody's coming in, and it's just a lot of traffic on there. I don't think I know one of the arguments in the Conleys paper is they need to extend the street out to the end. There's no reason to do that. It's not done all over the beach. I think Columbia is probably one of the few that has it. Raleigh doesn't have it. But could you tell us why that, let's call it 40 feet is gravel and not paved all these years?
Okay, that discussion came up with us in the very beginning.
Okay.
We consider that a street to that point.
Right. You mean the gravel can
Yes,
count?
staff considered it a street, even though it's gravel, sand.
Yeah.
So we did talk to the Conleys, and staff with our attorney has said that is a street that goes out, even though it's gravel or sand.
I agree with you.
Okay.
My question is why is it gravel all these years?
Well, it could be that anybody petitioned the town to pave it. Sometimes that's the issue. not saying it can't be, but CAMA could get involved in things like that, on paving, stormwater, and things like that.
Does that exist anywhere else on the beach?
There's probably a couple places more that,
They're gravel.
that could be gravel, yes, and sand too, yes.
Thank you very much. Any questions about what I did at my house or how the other houses conform or don't conform?
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this all.
Thank you.
Intuitively, I've been listening, I've been driving from Virginia to register. Do I- oh,
You can come in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Carrie Sims, representing the Rollins family of 5 Augusta Street. I've been listening the whole way down from Virginia, just here to agree with the opposition to the setback that's been stated by everyone else on the street. So I just wanted to register that. 5 Augusta Street. Anything else I need to say?
Thank you very much.
Could I just ask a question? I'm not sure who she was representing, what property?
5 Augusta.
Thank you.
There's gotta be more.
Chairman Smith, there are some people online. I'm going to ask if anyone who is remoting in would unmute your mic so that I know. Don't speak yet, I'll call on you, but if you unmute your mic, I'll know that you want to speak, please.
No words, no noises.
Can they hear me as I speak right now, Robert?
Yes, they can.
Okay, I don't know if any of them, but we have read the emails from the Arab, if I pronounced your name properly, I hope I did, from Doug Dyer, and another one from Vincent Rawlings Dyer. We do have those emails in addition to some of the emails that of the folks who already spoke.
Okay. I know that Mr. Dyer has unmuted his mic as an indication that he will probably want to speak.
Okay.
You can go ahead, Mr. Dyer, if you'd like to say something.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for the time and the service. I appreciate all the comments made by our fellow neighbors on Augusta Street. My name is Doug Dyer, and I'm here with my mother, Vincent Dyer. I'm a 4th generation part owner at Augusta Street, which was at 5 Augusta Street, which was built in the 1940s. We're just registering our opposition to the text amendment to the setback. We think it's an unfair action that will adversely affect the households on the streets that have been long-term taxpayers and residents and contributors to the Wrightsville Beach community. And so, given many of the points that I won't belabor or reiterate made by my fellow neighbors, just about fairness and other property owners abiding by the setback requirements on the house previously, in addition to the concerns around negative property value impact to existing houses on Augusta Street. We're very concerned around that. I think those are the 2 main points, as well as some of the others that were brought up today. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time and won't reiterate everything that's been said, but just want to register our opposition as well. Thank you all for your service and time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just in case someone doesn't know, at the bottom left-hand corner of your Zoom window is the microphone. To unmute, just click the microphone. And we'll give it a moment. So that's probably it, Chairman.
Okay. Well, we thank you everyone for that. And now, is there anyone, Robert, online or in the other room that wants to speak
in opposition to this, or in favor of this?
I didn't see anybody in there. I went to the room. I didn't see
Okay.
anybody else.
And no one else online, so.
That's correct. I mean, there's several people online, but no one has indicated that they would like to speak.
Okay. So then I'm just gonna rely on Tony Robert to understand that we can close the public hearing. We know if no one else wants to speak for or against. So I'll close the public portion of the hearing and open it up to discussion with the board. Anyone want to go first?
No, I'll go first.
Thank you.
You know, last time when this came up to us, we had no one show up, and I voted for it. Since then, finding out that the 10-foot access was granted by the landowner to get to the interior lot, he's taken that 7.5 foot to 10 foot on his own. And after listening to all the explanations of people that had to abide by it fairly recently with the 15-foot rule, I'm going to kind of, I feel like they brought some good points that not being a real estate person at all about values and the site reduction. But it seems to make it apparently is a big reduction on property values for the second and third owners. And to see these people have been there all this time. And I believe that we will see more of, if we grant the deviation down to 10 feet, the larger homes come in. And as they also said, they knew what it was when they purchased the lots. I think I'm going to be voting to leave it as is.
So I have to agree with that, and same. I think when we first heard all of this, there wasn't really any opposition that was voiced to it. So, but hearing and seeing, you know, all the people that have come forward and looking over this for several weeks and going and looking at the properties numerous times. In fact, just today with Leanne and Cheryl was there as well. I have a hard time granting a builder who knew what he was buying and knew the setback rules, granting him, you know, permission to change the setback on that corner lot. I'm not as much concerned about the, you know, people's views being obstructed, but I do think that, as Mr. Dyer mentioned, he said it perfectly, you know, these have been property owners for generations, paid property taxes, contributed to the town of Wrightsville Beach in numerous ways. And if these people have had to abide by the rules, the setback rules, why should we make an exception for one builder for one lot? It makes no sense to me. And I was really glad to read the letters that were sent in and to hear the people come and speak today as well. So, but it is interesting too, what Mr. Newkirk mentioned with the property, that how many people's property. I was amazed at the number of houses when you really look at it and you put it into numbers, the people's property values, you know, declining on each street. That, you know, 11 lots is what we're talking about, but when you look at the houses, you know, from that, it is kind of interesting to see the numbers associated with it. So I would have to say that my vote's going to be to leave it as is as well. I will also make note that I was amazed. We commented today about, I was surprised there wasn't sand brought in, or can you not build? We talked about that. Could you not build that lot up? Because it looks like it's sitting so much lower than every anything
Now you
else.
know
but-
How did they do
But-
that with
It's-
Campbell?
If you'd have saw the lot before, it was always down.
It was,
But
okay,
it wasn't as much it is today. Now, a few years ago, you couldn't fill that lot but with 2 feet of fill because of the flood zone it's in.
okay,
So that's the reason why those two properties have been traditionally below the street
below the street.
always.
Okay,
And that's some of the reason. They probably did take it down some,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And we also noticed the house on Raleigh Street today. That is a gorgeous house that was built within, confinements of the setback rules. And it's gorgeous, like, it's plenty big. It's, a gorgeous home. So, and that's all I'll say. I'll be voting against it as well.
I said from the get-go the first time, I was not involved the first time, I was not on the planning board. Were you on the planning? No, I was not. So the first time my first thing was, you knew what you were buying. You knew what the rules were, and you didn't, and I don't know if y'all remember, but I said that out loud to the gentleman in here. So I've always had an issue with that. You want to try to get the rules changed so you can build a bigger house, make more money, and I'm all fair with making money. But I think, and I've kind of had my mind made up for a while, but what Mr. Newkirk said, and then Mr. Pop, what's the gentleman's name?
Fondle.
When he showed the pictures of the unusable space, and we talked about today about how big that house is. I would be inclined to just, leave it where it's not grant them the fee.
Tony, is that considered deck?
The thing is, let me say this for the record. This is not just for that one lot. This tax amendment is for other lots too.
I understand that.
No matter what, everybody maxes out their house, whether it's a 4,000 square foot lot or a 5,000, everybody maxes out. My other comment is this, whatever is built on, let's say this is not going to be granted, they can still build the same square footage as that same house. It's just the width has changed.
Yeah,
I think.
right.
So I just wanted to bring that for the record.
Right.
The square footage will be the same. So,
I'm just.
but there's a lot of creative designers now, because with a flat roof.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
I
say
understand that.
an individual builds a contemporary house, which you see a lot of them. Some of them have roof decks. Okay, some of them, there's only a small area they're supposed to use for deck area. Let's say this area here, but then you have this, imagine this is up top and this got heating and air equipment and things like that. So that's some of the things that we never got into is some of those areas. So designers can get creative.
Yeah, I was just wondering what that unusual.
It's
space is.
called a roof. All it is a roof, and there's no access to it. So it's not a
Okay.
deck. It's
No,
not
I just
an
was-
area.
yeah, I'm
It's
just
like the
wondering.
Marina restaurant now, that top's not gonna be, right? It's
Yeah.
basically like that.
But how do they get away with the unusable space on the second floor?
I'm not sure if I'm following on that unusable space. They may have been
I guess it's
created.
considered not living, not heated and air, not
Maybe.
heated and cooled.
Yeah, but pools, we're seeing pools. You can
Always.
see a pool on the rooftop next. That would be something that we see. So,
Like the Parkland House, so the little bridge has got that pool
right.
way down. I'm sorry, I
Is
just,
Cheryl?
I mean, I think I'm in agreement with everybody. We'll just say I'm sort of frustrated with myself from the previous meeting. And I'm trying to figure out why, and then I look back at this drawing that 7.5 feet's that, 15 feet's this, and this is the structure. And it's smaller than 15 feet. And I feel like in that meeting, we were led to believe what they could build was just going to be this tiny little box on a set of pilings. And then when I go look at 15 Raleigh, and I'm like, no, that's a decent sized house. I can't help but think, and then to hear all these people that live on the street and have lived there for years, I don't know that I worry about the property value. I do, but that's, my biggest thing is these people have invested their whole lives on that street, and what they've always had. I can't support it.
Neil?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I was not on the planning board when this came through, I believe twice. But I did attend those meetings, and I felt that it was a complex issue at the time, that it included Bayside lots as well. And of course, we're not talking about that now. And I think it's smart to split that out. It's forced a lot of good homework. I think I must have either been 15 steps in front of you guys or 15 behind, making the rounds up and down the streets and looking at these properties. And I was amazed at everything that I've heard around the table so far, what in reality it looks like. You know, when people talk about how they've been there many years and how they've invested in their community, they've invested in it the way it's been for a very long time. That's one of those streets that hasn't changed a heck of a lot, except they've had to weather the storms and adjust to it by building up a bit. I see no good reason to allow this change whatsoever. And in fact, these are larger than 50, they're 50 some odd feet, 53 feet, is it? I don't see that there's any compelling argument, especially when you consider the house that was built on Raleigh Street and the precedent of the, you know, how long the 15-foot setback's been around. So I absolutely could not vote to support this.
Thank you. I'm kind of like what Cheryl said. I'm embarrassed that I voted to move this forward the last time. And I based it on the fact that, well, gosh, there's nobody opposing it, so what's the big deal? But I learned something. I can't do that in the future because I do have a concern that if we grant this and both sides get built this way, it will be a tunnel effect going to the beach. Because there will be 40-foot walls on both sides of the street, because our ordinances box people in now to flat roofs and, you know, forcing us to build boxes. The other point I'll make is I lived in a unit that was 35 foot wide and it was beautiful. I loved it. 35 feet wide was great. This can be, without changing the ordinance, 32.5 feet. So it can be a very beautiful unit, very beautiful home. My recommendation is we leave the setback as is. So is there any further discussion, or is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And the motion will be to
Leave current setback.
Not grant, these setbacks that they are.
Not approve the ordinance
Not
as
not-
ordinance
not approve the
2020,
text
yeah.
I do have a comment before we vote. I'm going to assume, Tony, my voice is quivering because I'm cold. Why is it a state ordinance or a town ordinance that we don't have to notify neighboring property owners of a text amendment?
It's just, this state regulations, you don't have to, you have to for rezonings, conditional use permit, things like that, but you don't have to for text amendments. Because there's so many of them that happen.
And I'm just thinking we could have saved a lot of people a lot of time if we did have that in place, but maybe it's something we need to look at in the future, just a side comment, but,
Okay.
So anyway, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Robert, do you need a roll call? Apparently he went on.
No, it's pretty clear who voted and which way.
Okay, yeah, it was unanimous. Okay, well, I thank the folks who attended for your input. Thank you very much. Then we move on to,
Second text amendment. Yeah.
those are both under agenda item B.
Yes.
I know, I think
Well, that'd be C.
Oh, now I can unmute.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Somebody want to talk or Rudy Wiley?
Yeah, well,
Oh,
I explained how to unmute.
Do we need Jim? Is she still there?
Ms. Wiley, would you like to say something?
no, I've been trying this whole conversation to say, to unmute, and suddenly it happened when it shouldn't have. I am a 77-year-old resident of Augusta Street. I have grown up on that street from my grandparents on through family supporting, as you all have heard tonight. So I applaud you for your decision, and thank you so much for thinking of us as residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make sure you all attend or make sure the Board of Aldermen hear this.
Right.
It will go.
Tony, the reason I'm confused is there's only an agenda item B on here, so I guess we're done.
No, the second part of I split it up so that it'll be easier for you to find, but it's under C.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, it's under C.
But it's not on the agenda.
The agenda.
It's not agenda, it's actually supposed to be one package, but
Okay.
maybe we should have done
I
this.
just thought maybe we were done.
No, we still got one more. And Chairman Smith and members of the planning board, this is the second text amendment for consideration by the planning board. This is will apply to the R1 and R2 zoning districts. This one's a little bit different. We started looking at the properties again from Stone Street to Mallard and to really Augusta, and you see a lot of the older structures are not meeting the setbacks. So we started in our ad hoc committee that we attended, we started talking about doing some averages of setbacks. And this is where this comes from, even though it is not a recommendation from that ad hoc. It's something we got out of the meeting, so we thought we'd bring this forward also tonight. But this text amendment was also advertised in the Star News. We did have this on our town's website. I think that's where a lot of citizens can get that information. But so we started looking at these properties. This is typical throughout the town. It's not just Augusta Street. It could be any of those streets from Stone Street to Mallard Street there. So you see, we came up with an idea that we would look at graduated setbacks. If let's say if this person was building a new house on this lot here, it was vacant, and you had existing houses here with different setbacks, you would take that average of the two within 100 feet and come up with the setback here. The minimum setback would be 10 feet, but it could be 11 and a half. So, and that was one of the things that come out of our ad hoc committee. So this one is for, and I'll read it for the R1 and R2. It's parcels located in the R1 or R2 residential zoning districts on the southern side and adjacent to Stone Street, extending northward to the parcels located on the northern side and adjacent to Mallard Street from the east side of Lumina Avenue to the 1939 building line, may have a front yard setback eliminated by taking an average of existing building front setbacks on either side of the parcel, 100 feet in either direction along the adjacent street right of way. When determining the front yard setback using this method, the front yard building setback line cannot be any closer than 10 feet from the front property line, with no other building encroachments allowed. Exceptions for the roof overhang is 24 inches, which is allowed on other properties. Parcels that are considered conforming lots may not use this method to calculate a front yard setback. So those would be automatically a 15-foot setback. So we started looking at some of these, and for the older homes, a lot of the old homes are not mentioned, but this is what we come up with to do an average here. So that's what's before you today. Is for the first one, if you look at 155.6.51D, that is for the R1, and the next one is for the R2. They read exactly the same way. And we feel like this is consistent with our CAMA land use plan statement of consistency. And I'd like to submit this to you for consideration. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Now, would an oceanfront
Yes,
lot
It would.
It will be calculated,
Yes.
it comes into this,
Yes, let's say the
Calculation.
oceanfront lot is here, it says to the 1939 line, so it could have effect on not just Augusta Street, but other streets. So
okay.
it could be an average there too, or down here. It would affect these.
So it's an average of the entire street,
100 feet, one
Oh,
way or the other.
one way or the other?
Yes, 100 feet. So, but no matter what, no 10-foot would be the setback, the minimum setback.
Tony, did you, do you have any research of where this approach has been used and what the timeline or the longer term perspective is of how a neighborhood changed?
No, all we did, Neil, we looked at some of the structures, even a lot of the older structures are not meeting the setback. The question is what happens when an individual buys a vacant lot here and their neighbor is at 4 feet and this was at 10 feet, we would do an average. That's the only thing that we come up with, is trying to come up with everybody would have an average on those streets there.
So in a vacant lot, I understand that. That would be an average of either neighbor. And you said in a currently conforming, they would stay at the 15.
They still be at 15 feet no matter what.
And then a non-conforming, is that going to be the same as the two neighbors?
Well, no, you just do an average, whatever.
That's what I
that-
mean, an average of the two neighbors,
Yes.
same as the vacant lot.
Yes.
Okay.
So the word vacant lot is superfluous in the argument. It's
Yes, we're just thinking that, but it could affect an oceanfront lot.
Would you anticipate, since this didn't have to be advertised to everybody, that somebody's going to come back at some point in time and say, hey, I want my 10 feet?
The same arguments we just had.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking.
I mean.
Well,
to
one
me-
of them did want to speak, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't know if they would or not really, because flood ordinances change every 10 years. You got different flood heights. And then the floor area ratio passed in 2000, so imagine that was a big effect. So, and height changed somewhere around 2000 from the top of the fire hydrant to the street. So they're actually shorter now. So things like that can happen.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, I see your point there. Okay.
What would it mean to Augusta Street, for example?
it just depends on the average of the setbacks. But I think we know on Augusta, there was a lot of non-conforming structures on Augusta Street, Fayetteville Street, and throughout the town. I don't know what I can't say I looked at Augusta Street or any of the other streets. We just come up with an average.
I'm just, if I can ask this or not. I'm scared to ask this.
But let's just say, let's use Augusta Street, for example. If it was that corner lot, maybe the setback would be 10 feet an average. You see what I mean? It could be, I don't know. Because we know, we heard the other neighbor behind them could be at 15 feet. So that could average out at 10. I can't say I really looked at that.
In other words, the corner lot, oceanfront.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a neighbor on the other side of it.
But I think we would take the one to the west.
Take the one to the west
Which
and
is
say 15
15.
feet and whatever he is, and average it too.
Right.
So he would get his 10 feet.
He could,
He could
yeah,
get the 10 feet.
anybody could.
There's
So
that.
we could be back at the same,
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I was
But
getting.
when we looked at this one, staff looked at this one, we started looking at the other properties too.
But as they get rebuilt, it'll go to 15 feet and everything will be uniform as long as that stays.
Well, in a
We don't
perfect
change
world,
it.
that's what you want, but, you know.
I
Well,
understand that, but-
unless somebody decides to not tear down and renovate for
Right.
less than 50% of the value of
That's right.
then
Which is
they're
the
held.
kitchen.
Right.
What's that?
Which is the kitchen.
I mean, you know, it's,
It happens, some people keep their older homes and make some improvements to them.
So that's the only ones that will benefit from this. It won't be new construction.
Well, yeah, it'd be new. Let's say if I own one of those center lots,
And you tear it down.
I tear it down, then I could do that average.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But
it
that
would
also
benefit
means
everyone.
this lot we just talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
undoing
Yeah,
what we
we're
just
undoing
did.
what we just
It could
did.
be any
Yeah.
oceanfront lot, yeah.
Yeah. we'd be right.
But they can't go closer than 10 feet.
Right.
Yeah,
And
but
then we.
That's what he wanted anyway.
That's what he wanted anyway.
So,
we just
yeah.
voted on.
I think, didn't we have people that wanted to speak? One of the gentlemen said he wanted to talk about
Yeah,
the
I
second.
think the other ones, when I get through.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
y'all can ask them.
Okay.
So do you, are we at the point that you want
Yeah.
to open it up to the public hearing?
I'd like to hear what they.
Okay.
I just have one question of Tony. So what is the objective of this versus what we just heard with the,
I think they're very similar. The question is in our ad hoc committee, we discussed this, we just touched on it a little bit. We touched on, well, if this doesn't work, what about averaging? And it would be for more property owners. I think this would affect more property owners. And it could affect the oceanfront property too, Neil, so.
yeah, okay, but why does it not go to the other side of Lumina?
That's just the way the staff wrote the ordinance there. We just wrote it for that section, from Stone Street to Mallard.
Okay, but what you're not saying inherently though, that these situations don't also exist on the west side of Lumina.
Oh, they do exist. They
Yeah.
do exist, yes, sir.
Yeah. it's just that-
They do, but we did not address those.
Okay,
Spot on.
We'll get the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, please. I think we're ready for that.
Am I crazy or would we be undoing what we
Yeah.
just did?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay, so
point.
this is a no-brainer.
It is. Thank you, but I
To the
get so
left,
hot
I
in
think.
these things.
Are y'all cold or any?
Yeah, I'm.
He's cold, I'm
Okay.
cold, she's
It's hot
hot.
in here. No, I'm just hot under this.
Oh,
I'm
good.
the rest of me's like chill bumps.
It gets cold.
Yes.
Tim, can you hear my ice cubes rattling?
Oh, thank you very much.
I need popcorn.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I really appreciate everybody listening and with the Jim's comment, a public posting would be fantastic.
Right.
That's, I mean, if you need a petition for public posting or something, please tell me what we need to do, because the idea that we can watch the paper all the time in our busy lives to find out something's going on right next door to us. Can you suggest anything about how we could make that?
Well, I think it would have to be a part of our ordinance where the ordinance, it would have to take a text amendment to do something like that, to
Okay.
say that you have to notify. And that can be costly too.
I've seen just, a yellow board put up on the sign says, hey, there's nothing to it. You just put it up and everybody sees it. It has to be posted.
We could, I mean,
within the
if the Board of Aldermen gives us that direction, we could do that, yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, okay. Regarding this, I think this could be misapplied and get into, buying houses or tear down houses to create things. I don't think it should happen, so I just wanted to say that while I'm here and Halbert's out there too. And before I leave, just one more thing. I do think this unusable space idea, that it's roof, is nonsensical. The roof's up above a structure. So to build a structure of a roof underneath the structure seems like a technicality to me. So I assume we should maybe start a petition to get the planning committee to look at that, because what's gonna happen is, now that it's happened, if it is successfully happened, other people will now use it. And so the volume of structures, as I said earlier, is gonna go up by demonstrably. You could have made your whole second floor a roof and push everything up, depending upon the shape of the lot.
and have nothing on the second floor and put everything on the third and fourth floor. Which is, I don't think in the spirit of what we're trying to do at Wrightsville Beach, which is create all these structures up high and take away, you know, the proper scale of people's dwellings. It seems really odd to me. So I'll suggest to our group that we write a letter to the plan committee to study that before it just takes off and goes somewhere. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure the name of the person who was just speaking. I didn't see them on the side of the screen there. Who was that?
Henry Fonville.
Sorry, Henry Fonville, I apologize.
That's okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm Halbert Jones again. And with regard to option 2, I recognize the idea behind that. I mean, it's used in historical neighborhoods where people, you know, want to accommodate non-conforming structures that set back at different spaces. It just seems to me it's could be very cumbersome to manage and difficult to control. I mean, who certifies what the setback is for all your neighbors, and it just seems to me kind of like a nightmare. But that's not my problem. That's your problem. But I don't know. I see that as being somewhat fraught. Although I am a fan of historic neighborhoods, and frankly, I'd rather not see everybody in lockstep necessarily in terms of the same setback. But just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else out there, you know?
No, that was it, and everyone online has left.
Okay, great. So we'll close the,
Nobody online?
he said there's no one.
No, okay.
So we'll close the public portion of the hearing and discuss it among ourselves.
I think you kind of already did.
Question for Tony. Tony, what did you suppose was going to be the way to define what the setback is for any particular property?
It would definitely be a surveyor, even though it doesn't say that. That's what you would do. You would hire a surveyor to look at the adjacent property owners and come up with that setback.
So that would be on the burden of the property owner seeking it?
Yes, that's right. Mhm.
And what would the surveyor be surveying? Would they be doing the edge of the front steps, the pilings, what?
I think it would be whatever is encroaching. It could be, let's say, it could be steps on some cases, and then it could be a building, the house, siding of the house or whatever.
So it could vary hugely.
Yeah, that could be a real debatable issue.
Yeah, and some of those houses, on all the streets that I went on, the house literally goes to the street, like
Yeah.
all the way up to the street.
Yeah, the original
So,
houses did.
Yeah,
Yeah, particularly on the streets closer to Stone Street. I mean, some of them had no lot line or
Yeah, no front
very
setback,
little, yeah.
Especially Stone Street.
Yeah.
Right on the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, that's a tough.
And I don't know the fix, but I hate to do a blanketed fix that I just feel like we just undid everything we did earlier.
yeah.
I agree.
I'll make a recommendation if we don't have anyone else that wants to,
You can make a recommendation or a motion?
I said motion.
Motion, thank
I'll
you.
make a motion, yeah, I'll make a motion that we just, I don't know how to say this, that we continue as we are with the.
Well, I think we denied ordinance
Denied.
2020 that deals with the
Yeah.
R1 and R2 districts with the average 10-foot setbacks. I mean, we should have had a number on that, but I couldn't get with Sylvia to get a number. That would have been easier. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
So
David,
next
you
time we'll
want
have
to
a number
say,
on there.
you make a motion to deny.
Yeah, I make a motion to deny this ordinance that we don't have the number, but for the 15-foot averaging, or the averaging of the lot lines.
I'll
Is that
second.
good enough?
Yes, I think
And
that's,
I'll second that.
okay. Got a motion from David and a second from Leanne. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's unanimous. Any other old business, other business from the chairman or board members or staff?
I have something I'd like to say.
Great.
Last meeting, we made 3 comments after the meeting. The rental company came and picked up the trash from at least 6 houses that I had seen that had trash out. So they must have heard something about that we were gonna do something. The noise that we talked about, we all saw the signs that said over the weekend, which said noise and speed was the other thing. So I don't know if you passed that on to the.
No, the town, I don't know if Leanne passed it on to the police and the
don't
mayor
know. I
and the
can't
board
remember.
probably.
Well, I don't know who passed it on,
So-
but there was some help, and now it hasn't changed this week. The same 6 houses that got picked up last week haven't been picked up this week. But
That's the evil
I just
twin.
like to, there was some help done with that. and
Yeah, I just started seeing the signs in
The
different
signs, we only
areas.
have 2 though.
Yeah,
Yeah, only is 2, yeah.
I've been seeing them in different neighborhoods and people have asked me.
The police are moving and they,
And
they're fussing about it.
And the trucks that come down with the big exhaust, they are touching the throttles like eggs. I mean,
Better, not completely.
they're not completely, but they're as good as they're going to get with those big exhaust on them. Because the guys, every time they see a group of girls were hitting it, boy, they just kept their foot off of it.
Well, it's also helped that some license plate numbers have been taken and names have been
Okay.
confirmed. And I did bring it up at a meeting, not a meeting, but just an informal thing. We need more of those signs. We only got 2 and the cops are having to move them. You know, and they said it's cumbersome to have to do that. So I think we should get more.
Yeah, and you police chief starts on
He
Monday
starts
or
at
Tuesday.
17.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and he's supposedly, but I've heard is he's known as the noise ordinance king.
Okay.
35 minutes.
Can you take care of that airplane?
From my camera and my car.
The one that pulls the band or?
I haven't seen that.
Oh, the Geico one.
Yeah, and he comes in when he circles around your house. You can't even carry on a conversation in your backyard because of how low he travels. And I'm thinking, she's fussing, I'm fussing about that
I
airplane.
went down to
Oh,
Coast
that
Guard.
Geico plane. I mean, if he's not over your house, it's not bad.
It's loud.
You talking about the Geico guy?
Yeah,
Oh, God, he's annoying.
but
Unless he's violating FAA regulations from a noise ordinance point of view, he seems to be okay.
yeah.
Until he's,
The ordinance doesn't cover what he's doing.
Well, Mr. Pilot, is he too close?
No,
Okay.
he's within the
I
regulations.
know.
Matter of fact, his sign is within the regulations because he has to have that sign up because they drop down usually 50 to 100 feet.
Right.
So he's actually probably 150, 200 feet above where he has to be to keep the sign.
it gives me visions of Myrtle Beach when every time I see that.
Oh,
thing.
yeah, it is
Makes me think of Myrtle
ridiculous
Beach.
and, but I earned part of my license doing the
That's right.
same
You-
thing
so-
in Miami, so.
Does anyone have any understanding if there's been, the signs are one thing, but has there been enforcement on any of these trucks and motorcycles? Because
Yeah,
from my deck, it hasn't changed one iota.
yeah, I agree with you.
Where I live, it's been very nice. I guess someone told me the mayor lived down there.
But what is the noise ordinance law during the day? Can they enforce
Yes,
some of that?
yes, they
I thought it
can
was only
enforce
at
it.
certain hours.
Oh, no.
But what they'll tell you is that it's judgmental on their behalf and they have to observe it. So,
Yeah, they
That's-
have
Yeah.
to hear it. It's-
but there are things I've been researching where there's a distance issue. And if you can hear it from a certain distance, it qualifies as being of a certain loudness rather than having to have some audiometer to pick up the decibels. And those kinds of ordinances range from 1,000 feet to 50 feet. Well, 50 feet's pretty darn easy to enforce. Because if
Yeah.
you can hear it down the street and you're around the corner,
But you have to be around the corner. That's the cop's argument is that they can't catch these people. I mean, they just have to be in the right place at the right time, sitting there and.
yeah, but you know as well as I do, they just have to sit on your porch or my deck and,
Exactly.
you know, with a radio and you got them. You know, I mean, these are pretty distinctive looking vehicles, color wise, with the lights.
And the inside of the tires and.
And it's a pickup truck, you know, so.
Well, he said the new police chief starts,
He starts the 17th.
and he's on or were you being facetious? Is he on a noise committee or is he
They
going to
said
be?
that I was reading things about him and they said he was the noise ordinance king. So I referred to him as the noise ordinance king.
Where did he come from?
What that meant.
Oh, that's
I
right.
guess Virginia Beach.
Which has the same problem.
Good.
Yeah,
You
but
think
they're
that'll
so much
solve the
bigger.
problem because it's very difficult and, you know, there's all kinds of noises.
Or if we put that lighted sign up down there, we could put it, that'd be one of the first things we could put up there instead of having that thing, we can have it flashing.
But you know, if we had a badge and a blue light, we would be able to determine who they are. And there would be no ifs, ands, or buts. So it's a matter of prioritization. The other thing is cruising. They're making multiple passes, and there are cruising ordinances, although they're a little bit more difficult because you could say,
And
well,
that's easy though, but that's easy, Neil, to the cruising thing, because there's cameras and I'll just use this as an example, Jimmy, and he's still up there because he's selling t-shirts and stuff. He specifically has this one guy. And we all know what the truck looks like. We all know that constantly, and Jimmy's got it all recorded on his cameras. He rides downtown for the girls in the bikinis and just floors it. And Jimmy's got him on camera literally, you know, I can't give you a number, like 100 times he's gone by there. And they got it all recorded. This
well,
one guy.
they turn around at Salisbury and they turn around down in your area.
Yep,
So, and they're coming back up to
we've all seen them.
North Luminous. So,
But they got a bullhorn now, they blow at them.
Mm.
At Jimmy's, they blow at him, and he knows now they're all, you know, on to him, and I don't know if maybe that will calm it down, but.
So he uses a blowhorn that's
No,
noisy?
no, I know, they're trying to chase him off, they're trying to make him think he's not. I guess and this might be part of it too, some gentleman evidently was with his child trying to get ice cream, and he did it with his truck, and it scared the child so bad. It was I guess a big fat mess down there. I don't know. That's what I was told.
All right.
Tony, thank you for all your work on all this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we didn't.
I'm ready for pizza, Robert.
I'm so hungry.
Yeah, thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
thanks, guys.
And Katie. Katie's put a lot of work in all that.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Say aye.
Thank you. Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, I can't stick into the chair.